and court in there.
You look like
Because
you're
we went through secretaries like
really
water.
concentrating on something.
It's kind of really interesting. We got a couple minutes, I guess. Just wanted to make sure. We had a little trouble with our live stream the other day, so wanted to make sure we had it up and running today.
All good.
Pretty good.
Good.
Brenda, did we get an OEM report?
Yeah.
This one.
You want me to forward it to you right quick?
Well, I didn't find it. If you wouldn't
They're
mind.
not
please.
playing fair out there, are they?
Oh, they're just having a ball.
They are.
I watched them yesterday, and it was just, it's just a pleasure. That thing was full yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Are they starlings? What are they?
Gee, I thought Clint was driving up on his motorcycle out there.
Yeah, it's Bob Fulton.
Is it?
Crazy.
I got it.
You found it?
Yeah, I did. Thank
Okay.
you. I'm sorry.
No problem.
I found it.
I didn't bring my book with me. Why not?
Yeah.
Sure, I've got it in mine, but
What are you looking at?
oh yeah. They sure are having a ball.
We got this hard copy. We're good. When all else fails, resort to the old ways.
The Board of Custer County Commissioners meeting will come to order. Let the record show it is November the 2nd, 9:00 a.m. Mr. Jolly, would you do the honor and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Flower.
Present.
Commissioner Kanda.
Here.
Commissioner Prince.
Here.
Attorney Clint Smith.
Present.
And Clerk to the Board Kelly Camper present.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Amendments to the agenda, gentlemen?
I do not.
I've got one, and that is changing staff report at 10:15 from HR Finance to landfill.
Oh, yeah, we forgot about that.
So, Mr. Christensen will be in, hopefully.
Will we get a report from HR Finance?
On the 14th.
Okay.
And that's all I had. Commissioner Kanda?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Did you do that resolution?
Great, thank you. Actually, Brenda was
It's
going
on
to bring
there.
that up.
Or it's on?
Oh, it
Oh,
is.
that's right.
Oh, yeah,
On
okay,
there.
thank you.
Down there at the
Yeah,
bottom.
yeah, perfect. Anything else, gentlemen?
No.
Okay. Audience introductions?
Jackie Bubis for the Sentinel.
Peggy Collins, Highway 96 Roadhouse.
Charles Bogle, rural Custer County.
Cheryl Trent, you'll be hearing from me shortly.
Bob Jolly from the airport.
Tracy Ballard, Tribune.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Appreciate you being here. I don't believe we have any minutes to approve. Attorney items?
I get to go first?
No.
Why not? Give him a break.
No.
Just teasing.
I've got enough breaks already.
You needed breaks.
Commissioner items, my apologies. Commissioner Prince.
I really haven't done much since yesterday. Spoke with via email a disgruntled resident, but that's about it.
Good. All right. I don't have any other thing other than just standard office stuff yesterday afternoon. But I believe Commissioner Candace been.
I got one or two things. I've been busy. I talked with Cheryl. Of course, we're going to be hearing from her, and she's introduced herself. We'll hear more from her, and then the process we're going to go through for the next 6-8 months on a strategic plan. Also did talk with on the airport, did call up Armstrong, and we got the RFP template, and I got it to Donna. And she's going to talk with them to modify that to meet our criteria. And we'll get it in time for the on Monday to get it published. And then there's a did talk OT6. I'll be talking with them at 2 today to make sure I'm going to give them the options. We can do it now, we can do it later, we can wait till spring, and the costs that are going to be associated with each of those options.
You talking about the burn?
Yeah, to move the barn. Got to move it first.
Yeah.
And then along the airport, we're going to hear from Bob here in a little bit. We do have that meeting coming up with the DOT Air Aviation Group, and that'll be on Monday up here. They were going to fly in. They decided to drive. They like the drive, they said, so we'll see. If you want to come out and we're going to discuss the items that they actually did have an opportunity, Bob did, and he'll bring that up here on part of his report, I think. When they went up for a discussion on what they were doing for the state level. This will be tailored to our needs as a separate discussion now, so they've got an opportunity to learn on that, and also help us with the grant process. Armstrong, excuse me, got a frog. Armstrong Engineering deals with that a lot, and so they'll be helping us do that. And then on the airport too, I talked to Kit Shy last night. The fire department wants to buy a compressor, air compressor, and put out there in the hangar, or not the hangar, but in the garage out there where the fire engines park. Part of the reason for that is in order to build air pressure up, they turn the engine on, they take it out and fire it up to open and shut valves to exercise them and do things like that. And rather than wasting time and doing that, they would like to have a compressor to charge the tanks with, and they're wondering if we need a tank out there, could use it, and I just mentioned that to Bob, and they can think about it. They'd like to share the cost with us. So probably an $800 tank, so we'll see what the airport board wants to do with that. And then I had a long talk last night with Herb Halter, with DOLA, talking about the CenturyLink partnership and working with the outage we had down in Wetmore. And options there to bring in a fiber line up the hardscrabble. So he and I know he's working with Christy, and you've talked to Christy as well. She'll be at the meeting on the 15th, and they'll see what partnerships are available. They've been CenturyLink has been talking with AT&T, for example, on partnering. So we'll see what evolves. And he likes the ideas. He was very receptive, and did say he's not retiring. He may be moving on to a new job in May, but that might happen sooner than later, he said. So we can stay tuned.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Sure, the commissioner and the attorney hadn't had time to do much since yesterday, but we're going to give him the opportunity.
I only need about 15 minutes. Just two things briefly. When Kit Shy was here yesterday in his capacity as the chief of the Wet Mountain Fire Protection District, and he was asking the board to consider an ordinance to protect the cisterns and other public property in the commissioner's office. Thought it might be a good idea to have something in place to protect county property. So I did just a little preliminary research on that, and I found some ordinances from other locations to use as possible forms, or to take some language out of. So I'll start working on that a little bit. The other thing, this was just something that was mentioned in passing yesterday about the road that's immediately east of the building here that is it's actually county property and not a road. If that's something that interests you, it would be an agenda item in the future, but if it's something you're interested in doing, I think it would have to be surveyed. You'd have to work with the town of Westcliff to give the town an easement over it, and then see if the town would be willing to maintain it or improve it, maybe even put some asphalt down there or something. But I just wanted to mention that would be the procedure. I think if you wanted to go that route, you'd have to have it surveyed and tie it into Rosita and Edwards.
And maybe to think about it though, we've got a strategic justice center coming in. We want to make sure whatever we do doesn't preclude something else that we could do, so
Yeah.
it would be required pretty
I mean,
much.
frankly, there's already a prescriptive easement in existence
Yeah.
just by use for so many years that it's been used as a road. You couldn't block it off anyway, without
be
legal
crazy to try.
proceeding, yeah. So it's already a road that people use, but if we want to get some improvements on, maybe we get the town of Westcliff to pay for it.
And along those lines, and I was remiss in the commissioner report, which I didn't have one, but, we did meet with, AT&T rep yesterday about the proposed, or pending now, monopole tower for cell phone tower, and they would access that tower from the street that you're talking
Right
about.
there, alley.
Yeah,
Katie,
and so,
Katie alley.
their engineers were gonna look at that and make sure the drainage was okay, and if that's not, they would improve or remedy whatever drainage problems we had along there. But I think primarily that drainage runs to the south, along the edge of the grassed area west of the sheriff's office. He didn't think there'd be a need for any culverting in there, but if they do, they'll install a culvert. They wanna be able to access that, cell phone tower from this street we're talking about to the east, 30 feet, and then their fenced-in area would be east of that, yeah, so. I'm wondering, number one, if we shouldn't at least look at naming that street. It's really a thoroughfare, it's not a street, because it's not named, it's not platted.
Right.
you know, we can pick it up.
We do have an address for that location of the tower. Jackie Hobby and I got together and came up with an address.
Which streets is it on?
It's actually an extension of the address of the sheriff's office, which is on Rosita. And you're 307?
702.
702, so that's 702.5 Rosita, which could be a little confusing because Rosita is the street that runs in front on the north side of the sheriff's office.
Be hard getting mail there, but
Yeah, but we didn't have a street name for that, so I don't know, would we need it to be a platted street in order to name it?
name it, right?
I think if we give an easement to the town of Westcliff, that would be up to the town to determine a name for it. I mean, I'm sure they'd work with us on it, but I think we should have a name for that, or a number or something.
Yeah, I mean, as time goes on, and obviously that tower goes in there, and I think Commissioner Canada's comments about the pending Justice Center may have some impact on that as well. If in fact heliport goes in on the southwest corner of that property, who knows what that address would be. So I think we should maybe look at.
And it might be considered as an extension of 7th, even though it's not straight through, it's.
Yeah, it can be. Sure.
My research with Mrs. Hobby, and we talked about it a little yesterday, is I believe the actual alley runs right past the back door of the courthouse. I think that is the alley. This town of Westcliff would have access to just like
The alley's
everybody
what?
else.
The,
Just right here by the back door. I believe that is the city alley, running north and south.
About parking for the courthouse?
The parking's on the east side of that alley.
Park both sides though.
Well, so I'm saying from the building to the scale house,
Right.
that is the alley.
where we park.
I think everybody's always assumed that the street we're talking about was kind of the alley, but it's not. That's private, that's county property that we just happen to use as a thoroughfare over history, so. Yeah, I think you're right. I think we need to just
Put it on an agenda
look
later.
into there and see about,
Westcliff ought to just deed it to the county and
well, the county owns it.
then why would Westcliff be responsible for maintaining it?
Well,
He wants them to take the easement.
I think Clint was suggesting if we
If it's gonna be a street, an
Street
official
in
street in
Westcliff.
the town of Westcliff, it should be an easement to the town of Westcliff.
So we retain ownership, just do an easement.
Right.
Tell Carter we need pavement back there, would you please? Yes, ma'am.
Any timeline for the tower?
Yes, thank you. Their intent is to have the construction start during the at the beginning of the second quarter of 2019. So they would like to have that tower in place and functional by June of 2019.
One of our conversations yesterday was that we were hoping the papers would write a story saying what is happening, how it's going, so we'll work with both of you if you like, so that the public has a good grasp of what's going on. I don't want just a tower to go thrown up there and they go, ooh, where did this come from?
It's been on some agenda
It would
items, but it's
be.
been buried.
Yeah, it would be
Right.
good for the citizens to also
Right.
know how that affects their cell service, whether that's for them, whether that's for the sheriff, whether it's both, you know, I mean, we
That's
just,
exactly right,
I
That's
mean,
exactly what it
you know, I put it in articles, but, you
That's why I
know,
think
they're
if
buried kind of.
both
Yeah, they're
papers would
buried.
like to talk about it, I think we would be happy to share all the information we have at this point, so the public could be aware of what's going on.
Yeah, it's an AT&T cell phone tower, which will also handle the FirstNet system, which is the emergency services.
That's their
Federal
primary-
government actually awarded AT&T the national FirstNet
job.
system. Yeah, and we talked about it. I think this is one of those classic things that I struggled with when I thought about becoming a commissioner is how do we get a feel for anything from the citizens? Here's a great example. We're getting ready to enter into a contract with AT&T. We haven't surveyed the community. You know, we haven't did a robocall to find out, hey, are you in favor, are you against, or whatever. So I think Commissioner Prince is right on track. It'd be nice to, even though we've had it in our meeting, a discussion in our meeting several times about it, it'd be nice to get something out there and
I'd like to
at least
also
give them the opportunity.
advocate that we have town hall type meetings that previous commissioners have had
Workshops.
to allow eco-works, whatever, but let the citizens come and voice
Sure.
they can know what's going on, they can voice their concerns and.
Make sure to get that out first.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
And actually, I talked with a gentleman yesterday, day before yesterday, about being a guest speaker at exactly what you're talking about. So
Wonderful.
I told him I would like to come to the commissioners and maybe we could do once a quarter town hall meeting. If we call it a workshop, we can all three be there, can participate in it. Maybe do that once a quarter, pick one or two topics.
I think that's a terrific idea. The more transparency we have, the better. I mean, people need to know what we're doing behind that door.
Good, thank you. Anything else, Counselor? Administrative assistant items?
Yeah, we talked about Jim Mann yesterday wanting to vacate that street. And I did talk to him yesterday afternoon, and he's leaving to Arizona for the winter, so he won't be back till April. So I told him to call in April when he got back, and we would put him on an agenda then, so.
His name spelled with 2 N's.
I believe so, yes.
I tried to find that street. I drive past there on my way home yesterday. I wasn't even sure what we're talking about.
It's hard to find any roads in Rosita.
Well, that street,
You're all-
it's never
I've
been.
never been there. It's
Yeah.
weeds.
It's never been bladed in,
So
so,
I'm not sure what I'm even looking at.
yeah. It's that San Juan Street, it's
Right.
never been established, it's on the map, but certainly not on the ground, so, yeah, that's, thank you, appreciate it. Anything else, ma'am?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, good. Opportunity for public comment? Anybody care to expound on something that's causing you gastric issues? Yes, ma'am.
Well, a couple of years ago, AT&T came down here and had a couple of public hearings because we were so outraged that we couldn't get 911 or anything else during the summer. So they have improved that one tower. It was much better this summer, much better. And I think you'll find that everybody in the county is going to be just delighted to get a new tower.
Yeah, one of our concerns, Peggy, was obviously the unsightliness of a 150-foot tower right here in the middle of the two towns. But they were very specific about their location. We suggested maybe some other places, but within 300 or 400 feet, they were not interested in moving outside of that circle of consideration. So I think who knows what all the reasons were, but obviously this first net deal, they want to make sure they're doing what they told the federal government they would do with that. But
And it will help. They are going to put, of course, a cell capability on it, like I said. And then the fact that it's not much taller than the one that's already there. And you got to want to look for it to see. I don't notice it driving around. I bet nobody else does until they look over here. Sheriff might notice it because that's how he finds his job.
Go to the light.
Right underneath it.
Go to the light.
That email.
Add a little more RF.
Yeah, you guys are all radiated over there.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
go ahead, sir.
I was going to add that the cell service is going to improve significantly, they promise. But to me, more importantly, is the E911 service. I don't know if you dial E911 that someone's going to go, how can I help you? That's what I'm worried about. So I'm very much in favor of this, and I'm really pleased that they're doing it. I wish they'd do it tomorrow, not 6 months from now, but
Well, I visited with him yesterday because we did we kind of walked around out there to make sure that we're all on the same page where it's going to go. He said one of the reasons, he said that it will absolutely be done by June 1st. That is their drop dead site working. But because I asked him specifically on timing because of the fencing that they have to put in is going to tie in with the new fencing that we're putting in.
right.
So working out that timing because they kind of have to come together there. But he said one of the reasons it has to take so long is because it is a federal government
Go through the bureaucracy.
So starting in January, they have to come out and they have to do soil samples, but then they also have to go through the whole process of making sure that there's no Native American burial sites there, that there are no endangered species. He was very concerned about prey dogs. Honestly, he's like, so we're not having prey dog issues, right? Because if we are, it'll put a stop on this project for 2 or 3 years. So, which, as we all know, close proximity. I mean, we have prairie dog issues that are close there. So he was saying we have to go through all these different hurdles, and that's why it takes so long.
And we got the paperwork yesterday on the Indian ruins thing. So it's just a document to fill out. But
Also, that tower is a source of revenue.
We're talking about 250 square feet, 50 by 50 square. So it's not like we're taking millions of
2,500
acres.
square feet.
And how much a month are they going to pay?
1,200.
2,500.
Or 2,500.
It's not
2,500 square feet.
Yeah,
Yeah, 1,600 a month.
$1,200 or $1,600 a month,
Right,
whatever.
16.
We have not signed a contract, a lease agreement with them yet, but that is supposed to be forthcoming in the next week or two.
Negotiations are on.
The other thing I wanted to say, because these two individuals standing in the back of the room have been hammering on me about this. We were fairly adamant yesterday about the radio frequency interference. And he said, well, number one, he said, believe me, this is an FCC project. He said, I can tell you there will not be any radio interference. But I said, that's not good enough. Either you do a study, we do a study, or we hire a third-party study to have a RF frequency or RF interference study done. And he wrote that on his notes and said he put that in the contract. So,
Well, where the concern comes in, it's not as much what they're going to be generating, because that cell band width is so narrow and focused. It's the rest of the RF in that area. KLZR being the big,
right.
and then all of my
comm towers, you know, all of the RF coming off my comm tower for dispatch center.
Yeah, and he said, what you guys do with your existing stuff, not in our wheelhouse, but he said, I guarantee you, we will have a specific band that will not cause any problems, but we'll see. So I think that whole RF thing, other than what I just mentioned, is more in-house. And I agree that we probably need to do something about that. I did look at the KLZR radio lease contract, and it's in there that they would stand the expense of a study if the county felt one was necessary for their band.
Maybe, you know, I don't know if there'd be Homeland Security funds or something if we did a grant change, but, you know, maybe there's some help through the South Region and the communication stuff to make sure that it doesn't interfere with the public safety aspect, because that would be valid, and just to have that documented.
Yeah. When you say it doesn't interfere, you're talking about AT&T stuff?
No,
or?
the radio tower.
Okay.
Because I think we've got some issues already.
Yeah, I do too, actually. I
Oh, we
don't know
don't.
what kind of dollars we'd be talking about for a study, but
Yeah.
we probably need to look into it. Other public comment?
I just have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Will you be getting us the information via email, or do you want to schedule a meeting time to go over this with Jackson and me?
Yeah, I'd say an interview
Okay.
would be probably more effective.
Okay.
Cover better ground and
Yeah.
make it clear.
Absolutely.
So should we call Brenda, or does Brenda want to email us, or does that want to work?
With my comrades' permission, I would just offer to meet with you, unless you gentlemen want to be
No, I think
involved in
that's
that.
fine.
I think that'd be fine.
Okay.
The three of us don't need to be there. I mean, I don't know what else I would add that Tom doesn't already know.
Right.
So will Brenda get
You can go through Brenda, or you can contact me directly, I don't care either way. Other public comment? Okay, we'll move on, staff
Thanks,
report.
Peggy.
The aeropuerto. Sir, how are you?
I'm the only one here. And what happened to the rest of your
Yeah,
tribe?
all the rest of your
Flew the coop, that's what
They're
they're
down at the store drinking coffee, is where they're at.
Eating donuts.
How are you?
I am doing well.
Good.
How are you?
Doing fine, thank you, sir. See about documentation here. I don't think we had anything, did we, from the airport?
No. I didn't see it.
I guess I'll put that on my agenda. We'll start doing that.
Yeah, if it's
It's
any
an outline, will help.
documentation, you know, that you want to look at ahead of time, certainly that'd be helpful, but
I'll do that.
good.
And for October fuel sales, it didn't actually dawn on me to download the information before we put in that M4000. So I don't have.
Lost it.
No, it's someplace out there. The credit card companies have it, but
Yeah.
I didn't get it. But on the 15th of October, we had our world fuel inspection. Came down, and for a second time in 3 years, we got a perfect score, which was amazing to me since I dropped some snow into the white bucket right as we were doing the test.
Okay.
Luckily, the inspector saw me drop it in there, so he knew that it was an accident. But anyway, we did get a perfect score, and we'll be getting a letter. I'll forward it to y'all when I get it. We started installing the M4000 on the 20th, and that was an all 5-day affair. Actually, it was 3 days. We took the old one out and put the new one in, fired it up, and it was working. Unfortunately, when I put my credit card in there, it charged me 25 cents for a gallon of fuel.
Not good.
Which was not real good. So we got a hold of QT Pod on Monday morning. We shut the system down for the weekend, and I did put a note out there. We called QT Pod Monday morning, and they worked with us and got our price up.
Reset it.
Reset it. And did all the credit card information and got that up and running, so the credit cards are working. Al Avenue, as a matter of fact, was the first person that came along.
Yes, sir.
And fueled his air pump, and it works great.
Okay.
We've got one little issue with it, and that's the overflow. There's an adjustment they can make to change the overflow. Right now, I think it's overflowing about a 1/2 but it's not doing a pre-surge, so I'm not sure that it's really an overflow. I have to be out there sometimes when people are fueling to see what the predominant way of fueling is, whether it's by gallons or dollars or fill-up. Because on fill-up it's not an issue, on dollars it's not an issue. The only time it's an issue is on gallons. And without doing the pre-purge, I'm not sure that it's really a problem, but I want to check it, so we'll be doing that. And I did send the motherboard, the DPS board, and the card reader back to QT Pod on the old night, I believe. But they did receive it. I just got confirmation last evening. They did receive it at 2:30 in the afternoon on the 31st. So anyway,
they'd already given us credit for it, don't they?
yeah, I believe so.
So it wasn't like they had to get it and then
Right.
refund us.
But they had a deadline of
Right.
10 days, give or take, so the paperwork.
Okay.
So I did get it back to them. And on the 24th, we went up to Front Range to a CIP, Capital Improvement Program workshop that was put on by CDOT, Division of Aviation. And we had taken a lot of stuff off of our capital improvement program because of some of the improvements that are happening out at the airport, and they were on our capital improvement program. So we said, well, this has been overtaken. And they sort of suggested that we leave it on there. Because that shows that we have public interest in doing things,
Yeah.
and that helps to sell our future programs. So there's a meeting coming up on Monday with CDOT and Armstrong and some other folks. We're going to meet out at the airport to discuss the CIP and grants and things like that. See, the first, on the CIP, there's the first 2 years are locked in. But talking to Caitlin Westerdorf with the CDOT, she said that they can change those first 2 years. So we're going to try to get her to change those first 2 years for us for 19 and 20 to reflect some of the
Things that are going on.
some of the things that are going on now, to move those to those first 2 years so that it shows that we have some activity going on. So we'll be doing that. And other than that, that's about all that's going on at the airport, other than...
Understand, she was excited about the AWAS.
Yes, yeah, very excited about that. There's apparently only two valleys in the state of Colorado without AWAS.
That's their
Tell me what that is.
Well,
please.
Weather Service Observation.
Thank you.
Air weather observation.
Yes. And,
We put in a weather station last year, did we not? Or was it, we put something in for weather last year?
it's called Say Weather.
Say weather, right.
Yeah, but it's not, it doesn't have a real long range, and you can't phone in to find out what the weather is in the valley.
I was just curious what it was,
With,
how it
with the
differed.
normal AWAS, you can call it up from anywhere
Good.
and
Get local weather. Used to be a person, but it's all automatic now.
Yeah.
Isn't that the whole world?
Which is another good thing about this M4000 is we don't have to go down to the airport now to get all the information. We can get it from anywhere. Online, I can get it from my cell phone anywhere in the world.
Do you have your sales, fuel sales report? Do you know? No, that's okay. I don't want to put you on the spot, so maybe you know off the top of your head.
No,
That's fine.
when I first started out, I said that I forgot to download that information
Yes,
on
no,
the chip.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean, it was not intentionally putting you on the spot.
Oh, that's all right. I don't mind being put on the
That
spot.
wasn't intentional, I promise.
I don't think I have anything else to pass on to.
Okay, well, appreciate it, thank
Thanks,
you.
Bob.
But that, putting that M4000 in was sure an
You can
eye-opener.
read it now, that's the nice thing.
You can read it, and it works, and
You know,
we don't have to worry about telephones anymore.
ever since I've been a part of the commission, we've had ongoing issues with airport fuel dispensers and credit card machines and all. Do we think we got it pretty well under control now?
Well,
Hopefully.
we got one other little problem that I forgot to mention. We have got a solenoid over in the fuel storage facility, where we store fuel, that is on its last legs. And I'm sort of wondering whether to get it fixed or not. We did have Eaton come down and look at it, and indeed it is bad. And their technician took a bunch of pictures of it, and they couldn't, when he got back to Eaton, they couldn't tell what was going on, so they asked me to go out and take some more pictures. I went out yesterday, took a bunch of pictures, sent it to them, and they called me and said that they could really see what was going on after I sent them the pictures. If that's gonna be, I don't know if that solenoid, it's already popped the breaker a couple of times. And I don't know if it's gonna last another day or another month or 6 months. But it's gonna go. It's just a matter of timing. And
Not too expensive, is it?
I don't know, after I sent them the pictures, they said they would give me an estimate. So as soon as I get the estimate, I'll get it to y'all and decide which way we want to go.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
But as far as the card reader goes, no problems.
Question?
Question about this AWAS,
Mm-hmm.
is that on the capital improvement list, or do we
Yes.
we don't have it now, but it's on the list, and that's why you asked if Dola was excited about that? Is that
Right.
correct? Okay.
It's out there. We had it, I think, in year 5 or 6, something
Okay.
like that. But they were excited to see that it was on our capital improvement program, and now they're thinking about maybe trying to move that up.
Did you mention the instrument approach that is in the works too? Did they understand
Yeah.
that could be part of that improvement?
Yeah, but that's gonna be, from what I understand, in the beginning, it's gonna be a private
It is,
instrument.
but it will eventually be published.
Yeah, eventually, but I don't know when that'll happen.
Good.
Okay, all right,
Thanks,
sir,
Bob.
thank you. Thanks for coming in,
Thank you.
appreciate it. We'll see you on Monday.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We'll see you on Monday.
All righty. Office of Emergency Management. Good morning. How are you?
you?
Where should I go?
That
Right
can start
to
wherever
left?
you
Yeah.
want.
Top to bottom.
Top to bottom, yes.
Or Clint.
Usually I start over here.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
How are you?
Get caught up here on my, good, doing well, thank you. There. I'm good, anyway. Did you find your,
Oh, yeah, I'm ready.
good.
So you got an issue, Cindy? Or are we good?
Do I have an issue?
No, I'm just teasing.
No, I think we're pretty good. You know, at some point, I'm gonna have you guys weigh in and help me with the state pushing on this FEMA approved hazard mitigation plan, but Meredith and I were going through all the checkpoints of if we do a FEMA approved update versus just an update, and I think we could probably get away either way. Larissa may be willing to help us with that threat part to make it an actual FIRA, the threat hazard plan. And then yesterday I went to the South Region meeting in Walsenburg, and this is just a copy, but it's, I gave Shannon the original, but it's on this $30,000 grant that was awarded, and so we're meeting on the 8th to walk that and fill out our historic preservation, whatever it's a one-page form, so it's good that all these things are falling into place at the same time, and we can figure out how to get that fence done with everybody's T's crossed and I's dotted.
Talked to Shannon, he said that the money had been allocated but not released yet.
Yeah, so it was released effectively October 1st, but it's in our 2019 budget, and the big kicker and the reason she was stressing on this form and getting this paperwork filled out right is Fremont County had a water intake fence project that they did not do, so the sanitation district put up the fence, did it all, and now they're trying to get the reimbursement, and the fact that they broke ground and built it, they may be out all of the money, so she wants to make sure we do it right, and any kind of homeland security projects that are attached to a building or to the ground are a little bit more complicated than things like the truck and the light tower and some of the other money we've got, but that's all of our funding for 2019, and it's considered the 2018 Homeland Security Grant, but it's our one project for 2019, so that'll keep it nice and clean, and I don't have a lot of little projects on the side.
So that 30 grand is specifically for the fence, nothing else?
And then we'll have to put a sign on the fence saying it was paid for by Homeland Security, and then
That'd be next to the electric prod.
yeah. And an asset tag, I think, so we'll have to get some sort of little metal sign made up and wire it on there, so, yeah, that part's pretty easy, so, cool. And I'm just trying to spend down some of that other money. No, we're just chugging along over there.
How's Miss Meredith doing?
She's good, she went up to the victims advocate training with Chris Barr, so that was on her own time, that wasn't part of the OEM hours, so she's pursuing that, and I'm not sure, what all it entails, but she's talked to Donna, and she might get woke up in the middle of the night to help out the sheriff's office. She, working on the comms plan stuff,
Anything you need from us that we could help you with?
Doesn't give a couple $100,000 for
Well,
that.
oh, yeah, well, that part,
That's
yeah.
why I said it as a request as opposed to.
An offer?
Yeah, anything we can get, I guess, we're trying to wrap up the rest of our grant deliverables, and, being grant funded, we're always trying to get our things done too, and, at the CES meeting, we got a little, surprised that the clinic didn't have a grant deliverable, and now we were kind of pressed to help them meet that deliverable, which Meredith is working on.
Good.
And then, E911, whether we can help them write a grant or not too, but, think we always need to keep in mind that, you know, we have a lot of things that we're required to do too, and when we shift to do something for somebody else, it might be pushing ours aside. But yeah, I think the biggest, you know, projects are trying to work on this fire mitigation and some of that money, and I met with Kit, I grabbed him after the meeting yesterday, and I'm not sure how realistic some of that is with the timelines and getting it done, but you know, if we have to pass on something and de-obligate it, then we could do something like that, but they're really time-consuming, difficult projects, and it's like I said at the E911 meeting, writing the grant is the easy part. It's the other 95% of the job.
Well, the clinic needed their stuff done by the end of the year.
Yeah, and I'm not, and, you know, and I know Lisa inherited it, so, no foul, but Meredith's working with Lisa and Beth, and we'll make that November. I'm not sure exactly what kind of tabletop we're doing, but something that'll satisfy their requirements. So,
Okay.
and yeah, I don't have anything real specific. So.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it. Yeah. I know someday we're gonna have to deal with radios. Whether we like
Well,
it or
we
not.
need to. We are looking at changing a couple of the Homeland Security grants, some small money, if it doesn't get spent, towards the radio pot at Shannon's request.
I'm gonna lose here.
I know. Sorry, enough.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Would landfill like to?
I don't think he does.
May I?
We'd love to have you, sir. We'd love to have you.
Morning.
How are you, sir?
Good.
Good to see you.
You're blowing a lot of blue smoke out there this morning. What was that?
Something's going on out there, I don't know.
How are you?
Okay.
Good. Good.
Sorry I missed you yesterday.
That's okay.
This is updated numbers through October.
Thank you, sir. Your report filed under yesterday, so you need a copy.
You want a copy?
No, I don't need it. This is just updated through October, because I was missing a couple of days when I did my report, so. So I have a question.
Working out. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, go ahead, Jay, what?
I apologize, I didn't mean to walk all over you. I was gonna ask how the water wells, or not the water wells, the test wells were going.
Yeah,
watching them on the way home.
they pretty much have them finished up. They'll be back in a couple of weeks probably to sample them. But they got them developed, and also that's a good thing.
Excellent.
275 feet for one and 285 for the other. And that's just first water, but they have plenty of water so they can sample it. Yeah. And then they'll sample the soil too, so.
And they don't
But
give
it all
you,
looked clean to me.
okay, but they don't give you really any indication
No.
until it's actually sampled.
No, they actually said that if there was contamination in the soil, because they bring up samples every 10 feet, that's why it takes them so long. But they said if there was any contamination, they'd know. But it has to go to the lab, and you have to do all that.
Everybody's got to get paid.
Right.
The drill site they were on when I was out there was at the west end,
Right.
and then they drilled north of there.
Yeah.
Okay. On the north side of the north pit.
Yeah, just between Rosita Road and our pit that we're in right now. Right between there. We actually have a wet dry well there and a gas probe right there. So now we have a groundwater line for well over there.
And I'm assuming then the geology must slope to the north into that valley across from the highway, or they wouldn't be considered or worried about drilling a monitoring well on the uphill side.
And so that's gonna be a good thing, actually, if and when the expansion actually happens, those wells are gonna play a big part in that. And so after they get their sampling done and get the report back and the state gets it and everything, then the engineers can get started, because that's a big part of their plan too, is those wells, so.
Another 8-inch casings or 6? 8. Which in the drilling business, that's a pretty good size
Pretty
for
big.
non-oil and gas exploration. I mean, an 8-inch.
Yeah, not really good though.
Good.
Have you had any repercussions on the commercial landfill fees that are gonna go into effect?
Not yet.
Yeah.
They haven't gone into effect yet.
Yeah.
Well, I just thought maybe once they heard, they
Actually,
would come
I
on
have a
into you.
question on that same thing is, we're gonna pull $1 out for every yard. Now, can we just do that at the end of the year? To save all the paperwork? Because I have, total yards on that.
that,
Yeah, 10,000.
Yeah, I think so, don't you,
And so
gentlemen?
come the end of December, or the third week in December, whatever, we can just turn in, then that'll be the number. So
About
the
12,000. Yeah, by then it'll be around 12,000.
dollars that would go into.
Yeah, I think that makes perfectly good sense.
Good. That saves,
Banking it for the
that
next
saves a
year.
lot.
Talk, just make sure we communicate that with Donna Hobby,
Right.
and we get a line item set up for that.
I figure by the year 2175, we'll have enough to expand the landfill.
At least,
There you go.
at least fence it. You started out, said you also had a question.
That was it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That
Yeah, I
was
think that's reasonable. There's no reason to do it quarterly.
Right.
There's not gonna be enough money to,
not gonna earn enough interest to matter.
Well, this is
good, good.
good.
And so that'll be easy at the end of the year, because the totals are right there, and they could just take that number and move it.
I think it's reasonable.
Good deal.
All right, excellent.
I'm off to Pueblo because my gas probe isn't working for my gas monitoring well, so.
So did you get your new truck?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that too.
No, the one that they found one in Texas, but it sold. Because it was quite an experience getting them to understand lease purchase.
Really?
They thought that I was just a customer coming in off the street and was gonna lease a vehicle, you know? No, that's not how it works. And so I finally
You got it squared away.
got them squared away on that end of it. But I'm gonna stop over there too. I'll go drop off my monitor, and then I'll go over there and talk to the finance man, because he won't return my call.
It's so cars, they never return calls. I mean, customer service is everything.
Yeah.
All
Leave a
right,
message that you're
sir.
going to Dodge or something and see what it says.
And actually, GM, the fleet, every year they have a fleet, salespeople to come around, and it's GM, or it might be Ford or Dodge or whoever, and they go around the counties and try to get them to buy vehicles. Anyway, it's GM's turn this year, so I talked to that fleet representative. So he's helping out a little too, maybe we'll get a little cheaper.
Great.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's how it works.
Thank you.
Jay.
Thank you for everything.
Be careful,
Bill.
guys. Thanks for coming in.
How you doing? Good. Is it really? Is there a barn raising going on out there? Yeah.
In a hurry.
I saw pictures.
Stay
Good
standing.
morning.
Morning.
Nice to see you.
How are you?
There she is again.
We have two. Want to do October 1st
Sure.
or September? September.
Yeah.
Both.
There's yours to sign too.
It's September 1st.
September, yeah.
Yeah, I have October.
Okay, I just want to know which one to pull it.
So we catching up, Virginia?
I don't know if catching up's the word. If you look, between September and October, county general's a little worse for wear, still not having to transfer any money yet, but it's getting there. But now Kelly's, you can look at hers between the 2 months in October. Did you see how much you brought in?
I think it was a record month. At least it
250.
felt like a record month.
Everybody's paying their fees.
Can't believe it.
So, 172.
Yeah, she had 172 in September, and she has 256
I don't know.
in
I've been extremely busy.
October.
I contribute.
Did you contribute? I did. Thank you, Tracy.
Oh, you've been in paying, huh? I think I did too.
She really brought it. I couldn't believe the difference.
Yeah, it was a huge month.
Any anomalies, anything we need to bring our attention to, anything that we're missing here?
This one looks pretty good.
I move we approve September treasurer's report.
Second motion?
We moved and seconded to approve the September's treasurer's report. Discussion. Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay, motion carries.
Thanks.
Thank you.
October.
Do they have anything on the grazing law, just out of curiosity?
It went in and out a couple of months at this one. Yeah, it's not on this one. It was like last month or the month before, I think. But it's just an in and out.
Okay.
Seemed like we talked about that.
Yeah.
We did. Oh, good.
Chair would entertain a motion.
I'll move we accept the October report.
I'll second
Moved and seconded to accept the October's treasurer's report. Further discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
it. Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Motion carries. Fourth bill.
Jay, you were easy today, thank you.
I have one more.
Oh,
This is my PT report that you guys were supposed to peruse last month, and then we didn't meet, so.
Right,
what is it?
public trustees.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. How you doing, sir?
Jim, did you talk to that U.S. attorney?
No, he hasn't called. I left a message
Okay.
and told him I'd be happy to answer any of his questions, but, no, I haven't heard anything.
Okay.
And I don't know why you called Kelly to begin with.
Should go to you, you're the one that answer that.
Yep, I'm waiting for him to let the message in and call back. I might try calling him again.
Okay.
Do you need action?
No, you guys are just supposed to look at it and I could tell you.
You know, on those fees, Virginia, I'll be curious if we see, I mean, we've had a huge increase in people anyway, but Drives was supposed to fix some of the
And that's why you had an
fees
increase?
that weren't correct, and I wonder if,
That's what.
if you see some of that,
That's
as a
idea.
fix, I might look into that, 'cause, yeah,
I never thought of that. It's still a pretty good increase between 2 months.
yeah.
Great, thank you, ma'am.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks, Virginia.
Yes, ma'am.
As a point of order, I think that your first motion was to approve her report and the second one was to accept it. And I think accept is
Yeah,
correct.
that's, when I restated the motion, I thought,
I'm not sure that was supposed to be accepted, so, yeah, your point's well taken. Would we let the, no, I think it's fine, would you let the record reflect, ma'am, that it should have been
Accept?
approve her report?
Accept.
Or accept, sorry. I said approve, should have been accept the report. Thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
It,
It's here.
big eye, big teeth.
You know, I don't think that I look very good in a clown suit, but that's all right. There you are.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning.
Appreciate it. It just order Mr. Vernon, how's that?
However, good morning all.
Good morning, good morning.
Been a fun and eventful month. Spent a lot of time over at the Sheriff's Department in the equipment room back there. So, some of the notable projects completed was removal of the old phone system. Removal of the old phone system from the Sheriff's Department, pulling out all the old equipment, which is now taking up residence in my office, storage rooms, and the garage next door, which we'll get to a plan for that on the next page. Consolidated a lot of cable traces, cleaned it up. If you haven't visited lately, it's beautiful in a techie, wired sort of way.
Surely everybody would appreciate that.
I can imagine how you dream.
Steampunk and
Yeah.
stainless steel, but that's all right. Computer upgrade for dispatch. Put in some new computers there. We also changed out a lot of the old monitors because they were starting to fritz out. And we also moved a lot of monitors around. If you go there and take a look, it's really beautiful, really user-friendly, very ergonomic. So
Good.
that's a good thing. As we talked about in the budget hearings, I was able to renew McAfee for 2 years, so we don't have to put it on next year's budget.
Nice.
Get a little bit of a discount for that, and we don't have to pay for it in 2019. So, new computers. I'm in the process of installing multiple new computers that various departments have ordered and asked for. Upcycling older moderately used computers to non-essential locations, so we can save some money that way. Ongoing projects, of course, the general election right now. The excuse me, which will be ready for the website on Tuesday, and it'll look nice. So, computer replacement retrofit program, like I said, I have 8 computers stacked in my office right now, so that's always a fun time. That includes things for VSO, search and rescue, the assessor, working with their budgets this year so we don't have to take care of it next year. All of those are, of course, Windows 10, so we don't have to upgrade from 7 to 10 during the Windows stopped supporting 7 in 2020, so we have to switch over before that. So all of that's going into place right now. As we talked about, for the excuse me, for the fiber line, taking care of the fiber line, 911 has picked up a lot of the cost for the fiber install, and I've identified several lines that can be closed out to help pay for the high-speed fiber that we're now using here at the here between the county building and the sheriff's office and all that. It's just going to take about a month to or 3 weeks to a month to sort out all the addresses that need to be switched over. Which brings me to some proposals.
Okay, before we move on, can I
Yes,
ask you a
sir.
question?
Yes.
So CenturyLink's got their fiber in the basement,
Yes, sir.
and apparently they're gonna be tying on to that for the new AT&T tower.
Gotcha. So the fiber bundle in the basement has basically 10 lines of transmit and receive. Between the county building and the courthouse, we're only using 1. So
They have extra lines down in there that they can actually tie into, that they won't be interfering with our lines, because basically they are a fiber of light between here and the CenturyLink office. So they'll be tying into a different one than the one we use. And they've already had techs down there in the basement. I was amazed at how fast that happened.
Because they were looking at it yesterday. I didn't know if they were in the basement yesterday or.
They had techs down in the basement 3 weeks ago. I was amazed. I mean, it took us moving heaven and earth as a county to get fiber in there, and AT&T makes a phone call.
I didn't know if they were going to tie in outside.
I believe their plan is to tie in the basement.
Or in the basement, so.
But don't quote me, because they're holding their cards close to the vest. But from what I hear from the techs, they're planning to tie in down there.
All right, go ahead, sir, sorry.
Okay, future projects. So I get multiple calls from multiple agencies each week asking for money from us to handle our data processing, to handle storage. Amazon calls me. It's
What agent? What do you mean agency?
I apologize. Different organizations. Amazon Business Services and organizations like that. I'm discounting them because pretty much they're just expensive. Amazon was the cheapest, and they wanted more money per month than we spend in the entire year on data storage. So it was not conducive. But the one that did pique my interest is called GovSpend. And basically what it is a database of excuse me. I'm coming down to something. It is a database of purchases, vendors, and equipment of government organizations around the country. Okay? So let's say a government organization, and this is what piqued my interest. I was pretty much ready to write it off. I'd listened to a conference call. We did a web-based interaction. I was pretty much ready to write it off, and then I realized, wait a second, we're looking at spending a significant amount of money on radios. Okay, so for instance, if an organization, a government organization, a county in back east spends $3,000 on radios, per radio, and another one in California spends $3,200 on radios. This is a database that shows how much they spent, where they spent it, the different vendors that supplied them, what type of service they offer, what type of services they include in the price, and create spreadsheets that we can then use to analyze who's spending what money on what, essentially.
And you use that to determine when you need to buy something, you have a database of the different expenses, what people pay, who to go to, that type of thing?
Exactly. That's exactly right. And on top of that, they also have a bidding option, whereas I can say, I need 10 radios, and I put it out there to the vendors that are listed there, and they can all then say, oh, well, I can supply them for X amount per unit, and then I can fulfill any bidding requirements. If it's let's say we're making a $10,000 or higher purchase, we can get multiple bids and offers for the purchase.
You could put it out one time and go to all the vendors in their database.
They pulled up several examples where people would put out bids, and within a week there were about 30 bids for each of their supply requests. And they buy this is a database of everything. It can be, you pulled up grenade launchers for a police department, to bandages for a county-run EMS service. And so what I have done, and I've gone to different entities. Basically, I've gone to the heads of certain CES groups, fire department, OEM, dispatch, the clinic, and asked them what they thought of this, and they all basically gave their tacit approval to investigate this, and the GovSpend folks are going to set up a sandbox for me so that I can
kind of play with some things and experiment with it a little bit. But basically, it comes down to it's a subscription service. It comes down to $2,000 a year. But if we were able to split it between all the different CES entities, it would be about $100 to $200 a year. And we could pay for that in the first 2 years, or we could pay for it in the first year, based on radio savings alone, which we're looking at replacing for each entity. So I'm not asking for a check. I'm not asking to spend money right now. I just wanted to bring this as a proposal and say, can I have your tacit approval to investigate this and see where it goes?
I don't think we need to vote on that.
It sounds like a very cool concept someone came up with. Sounds like the vendors would hate it because everybody knows what everybody else is paying and they can't sneak in there. And it sounds to me like
it was eye-opening. I just spent about $15 per McAfee license for the entire county. Out of 70 licenses, renewing for 2 years. And then I go and I find that one government organization paid $30 a license for 300 or whatever.
Gosh,
and then some I find paid 12 from the same vendor.
Isn't that crazy?
So it was a
Whatever
surreal
works.
experience. Yeah, exactly.
keep
So,
working on it. And
okay.
I think our consensus, come back to us with a proposal if you feel it's something that'll ultimately save the county money.
All right, we'll do.
Thank you.
Good
job.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, this one piqued my interest, and they didn't take no. I mean, I was in the middle of the 911 changeover. I canceled several of their several conference calls, but they kept on calling me back. So it was interesting to experience that. The second proposal I wanted to run past you was a county eBay account. When we did the 911 changeover, I've got a bunch of equipment in that closet, in other places around, that needs to go someplace. And some of it's not worth anything, some of it's just going to be recycled and thrown away, but some of it still is worth something to some people. So I wanted to ask your permission to set up an eBay account, say Custer County surplus sales or something like that, so that we can sell any old equipment, and we can actually branch this out to, let's say, Road and Bridge, or different entities that need to just move things. And it'll meet the requirements for the big bids of surplus sales for the county and all that.
How does it do it for people who don't have a computer?
It doesn't.
It doesn't? I'm sorry.
Therefore,
I think the legal term is too bad.
That's so sad.
you gotta make it available.
Yeah, I don't
to
see
everybody.
a problem with that. I mean,
Well, the only question I would ask is, would you be the administrator of this?
Probably so.
Whoever it is.
Mm-hmm.
How much time will it take, because you have to put pictures and descriptions and all that, and would it interfere with your normal business? Because I know there are a lot of governmental auction sites, you can say, come pick it all up, they keep half the money, you get half the money.
I see.
Without having to take away from our daily duties. That's my only concern. If there's surplus time to do this, I think it's a great idea.
And that is a very valid concern. I mean, there's a lot of work going on right now with the election, with everything that we've done through.
But the other thing is,
I've done eBay, it is not.
I know.
You and I
We have,
about
yes.
7 years ago.
Yes,
and,
exactly.
Yeah, and you knew what a hassle it was then.
Yep, that's
but it's
true.
not something that has to meet a certain timeline. I mean, we could do it whenever.
Well, that's exactly right.
We could.
Even if I just sold off a couple of, one or two a month,
Yeah.
that would be something, and it doesn't cost us anything, but except for time and energy. So,
I like the idea, but I am serious about, there are some good old boys out there that like to buy, dump trucks that don't necessarily have a computer.
I see.
And, you see what I'm saying, depends on, you would like to be able to sell it to everybody. I mean, that's a requirement.
I wouldn't. I don't disagree with that. I was just wondering how would you
How
get that out to them?
Well, the only other,
Having a
how we do
garage
it
sale.
now is we
Or
throw it on a newspaper.
newspaper.
And so
Public
you can
notice
do
in the
both. You can
newspaper.
put a public notice out there and make sure it coincides with timing on your eBay.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
The electronic
Maybe we need
stuff,
to
I
know the
don't
legal
know.
ramifications
Yeah, I
around,
wouldn't
around
mind,
each aspect of it then.
Right, but, you know, if you're gonna try to tie in road and bridge and junk, whatever you wanna get rid of out of landfill or whatever.
Well, if you're gonna sell off county property, it needs to be
You have to.
through an auction. We can do it on eBay, but you need to publish it to the local residents, so they're aware if they are interested in buying.
And somehow,
They have to
the
go to
guy
eBay.
that doesn't have a
publish
computer,
the, I see.
work,
Okay.
go over to his buddy that's got it,
Equipment on
put a
eBay.
bid in for it.
Okay.
In the paper, so they know to go to eBay. if they
Gotcha.
want
Something
buy
has
it.
to be done
All right.
to keep it on the up and up.
It's a lot of work putting stuff on eBay. That's the only thing I'm
It
aware
is,
of.
it is, you're right. Maybe next year when I get an assistant.
What else? What else?
That's a good idea.
One page,
So-
2 pages.
I decided, yes,
Good move,
I'm
thank you.
trying to.
No, I'm complimenting you
Thank you,
for not wait, I mean, 1 page doesn't mean much, but over a year, all the departments,
exactly. Yes,
Good. All right, everything else
All right.
good?
I think so, yep.
Small print.
Thank you very
You got
much.
everybody-
Small print?
Small print, single spacing, all in
Yes,
front,
sir.
yeah.
Right.
Trying to, I'll get there, I'll get there.
yeah, you use less toner.
That's it.
Mhm.
Save on that. Good,
Um,
5 minutes.
yeah, any unfinished business, gentlemen?
No.
I know we've got some people here that are on the agenda. We'd like to take about a 3 or 4 minute break, if that's okay. We'll be in recess for about 4 minutes. Break.
You go ahead.
Yeah.
Just Cheryl, say Cheryl. Here, you
I
can
put it on,
this real quick.
you know.
We're gonna put this in.
It happened very much, brother. How you?
Now you can bang it.
Call the meeting back to order.
She was upset because Christie's involved.
So we'll move on to new business. We will allow public comment, and would request that public comment be limited to the specific item that commissioners are getting ready to vote on. I've spoken with Ms. Trent. She has acquiesced to move to the bottom of the agenda. So we will move on.
Get everybody in
Yeah, we've invited the elected officials to come in and set in on her presentation. That's why we're moving down. So with that, we'll move on to the next item of business, which is presentation by Kevin Patterson and Judy Oleman. Welcome.
Thank you. Feel free to bring up another chair.
Yeah.
Julie.
Good morning.
Chris and Cross.
Good to see you.
Yeah. You're welcome to grab a chair.
Well, we'll bring another chair up.
That's right, you are.
That's right, you do that
Yes.
for a living.
Right? Thank you guys for having us.
Yeah, thanks for letting us speak. We're a new trash company started up. The truck will be here tomorrow, or today. We are locally owned. It's comprised of Leonard Allman, Kenny Patterson, and myself, Kevin. P-Bar-O Disposal is the name of it, and we'd like to bid for your trash services in 2019.
Okay. Well, congratulations, number one.
Thank you.
Perfect, yeah. I would think that the commission would certainly entertain the idea of looking at a bid proposal. I think primarily we would be talking about the road and bridge, the courthouse, of course. You're not in the porta potty business, so that's not a consideration. So I think that would be all that we would have would be the
airport has a dumpster.
Yeah, airport out there.
The sheriff's station has a. You're just talking about all the county dumpster business.
Less Wetmore.
Well,
Do we go to Whitmore?
I think the American
I'm
way
just
is
asking.
to.
I believe Woodmore is serviced by somebody else right now, but we'll bid it for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I had asked to see where we had dumpsters at. I hadn't thought about the airport, so that's a good point. So we'd probably be looking at 4 or 5, huh? And that, what frequency would you think? Monthly, semi-monthly?
Whatever you need.
I think weekly is what we do here,
Weekly
for
here.
sure.
But not down at the airport.
Yeah, it'll be slow.
So we just have to.
Fire station, we talked to them probably. And road and bridge.
So you would basically bid a weekly rate.
Weekly or monthly or bi-monthly or whatever you guys need.
And then we'd say, okay, well, this is what we have. Okay.
If I may, I think this is the American way. I compliment you on starting a new venture. I think we as a county feel that it is our duty to save as much tax revenue as we can, and the bidding process is the best way to do that. Service is obviously of paramount importance also. You could bid it way under someone else, but if you have one truck and it's broken, now what? So those are the kind of things that we need to think about. But I personally, and I'll defer to my fellow commissioners, welcome the opportunity for you to bid on county business, and we'll ask Oak Disposal to do the same, and I think we'll talk about the ramifications of the bids, and price may not be the total deciding factor for things like I just mentioned. So I compliment you, and I think it's great, and I would look forward to an opportunity to do that.
And you guys are aware that effective January 1, commercial rates at the landfill are going up.
Right.
So, okay, good. Yes, ma'am.
Mine is being delivered on Monday.
Nice. Good. Yeah, so, yeah, I'm excited as well. I mean, anytime, we have another, business adventure up and running, it's good. Yes, ma'am.
So my question is, since before there was only one game in town, do we put this like in a newspaper or put it out to bid, like for 2019 services for both places?
Yeah, I would think so.
Just like the newspaper.
Just put a notice.
Yeah, we need to do that for sure, and we probably ought to do it fairly quickly because we're already into November. Give both entities an opportunity, maybe a third entity from somewhere else feels it's cheap enough to come up here and compete. I don't know how they could, but I mean, you know what I'm saying. We can't limit it. We need to do it the proper methodology.
We usually do that for gas, our gas propane services too.
So it's $10.25 a cubic yard is what the price will be starting to. Was it $10.50?
No, $9.30.
$9.30. That's right. It went up $1. So you know.
Good, very
that
good.
was Jax's price.
We will, I would think, handle the bid process towards the end of the year just like we do with propane. So I would assume.
So you got one truck right now?
Trucks should be coming today.
Brand spanking new, I heard.
Wow.
Brand new dumpsters.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Yeah, what color is your blue?
Blue.
Sky blue. Dark blue.
Sounds great. Are you gonna have, the small plastic containers too, or just the large?
We have 95 gallon totes at this time.
Perfect.
We're looking into the options of doing the 65, but we haven't decided on that.
Great. Well, I wish you tremendous success on a new venture. And I think the county fosters competition and locally owned business, and I'll speak for myself, but I'll bet I'm speaking for my fellow commissioners, and we appreciate you coming to us and telling us what's going on and asking to be a part of the county solution to our sanitation issues, and good luck.
Good. Excellent. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Julie.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I have a hard time keeping all the paths straight. Kevin and Kenny?
Kenny.
You're Kenny's brother, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And he's an owner also?
He is.
It's
Leonard Alleman,
Leonard
Kenny Patterson,
and
Kevin
the
Patterson.
two Patterson.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good.
The little one hunts too much.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he got a full-time job.
Have the two names.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Attainable housing. Mr. Vogel, welcome. Takes all I have to say attainable and not affordable, but it's just because it's a habit.
It's transitional for all of us, yes.
It's just a habit, that's right.
Well, we're still yet to work the definite definition out, but to try to formalize our housing issues, I think you should have copies of our proposed bylaws.
Yes, sir.
As well as
Budget request
and a list of
committee members.
That's
the
yes.
3 we have, yes, sir. Where would you like to start, sir?
Well, I think the key thing is to make us official. It's a matter of I would request approval of our bylaws.
Yes. I would think that's a reasonable approach, and I want to commend your group because I read these bylaws. If every organization in our county had the bylaws written like this, we'd be in good shape.
Well, we're glad that we're setting a good example.
Yeah, that's an excellent set of bylaws.
Well, I move we accept these bylaws.
All right, I'll second the motion. Been moved and seconded to approve the bylaws of the Attainable Housing Committee. It'll be one of those interesting things whether we get the cart before the horse. We did vote to establish the Affordable or Attainable Housing Committee.
As far as y'all's decision?
Yes.
I
Yes.
thought we did.
Yeah, some time ago.
Yeah, so we're good there. So then this makes perfect sense to me to then approach it with the bylaws separately. It's been moved and seconded to approve the bylaws of the Attainable Housing Committee. Discussion, gentlemen? My only question, and it has to do with your membership and the bylaws because it's in here in the bylaws, and that's using your COG member as a tiebreaker. That's the only time that vote would be considered. So it's semi ex officio, but
A little different than
yeah,
I think we've got probably any other.
it's not a normal voting member and it's not an ex officio member. It's a hybrid between the two is the way I looked at it.
But I think, and that, Autumn was comfortable with that. You know, she is our subject matter expert. So there's, so far in almost 2 years that we've had the committee, a tie has not been an issue. So,
right. Now, so if it's, if you do not have a piece of legislation end up in a tie, then she's not gonna vote at all.
right.
Okay.
So she's like the vice president.
Yeah, in a sense.
I was at the meeting when this was discussed with Autumn, and I just wanna say, this just, to me, it makes perfectly good sense, because attainable housing is really not a standalone, member of the county. We're so twined with COG, in the Upper Arkansas Area Council of Governments, that it just makes sense for them to have a tie vote if something came. They have a opportunity to be part of this in that aspect. So it just makes sense to me. I had no issue with that when this was proposed.
Yeah, I thought your terms were reasonable and the number of members on it I thought was.
Well, it kind of grew, to be real truthful. That was that was the reason why I didn't have amended time, because we upped it to 9. And basically it's it advantages of those of us that have been involved in this for the most part, but it does give representation to both towns in the county. And then a month or so ago, we decided that there were kind of a missing element in this, and it was suggested that we put somebody in the construction business and somebody in the realtor business, and that's where Tony DeLine, which had coordinated with us early and has particular interest in affordable, attainable housing, and then we solicited with Matty Burt to represent the realtors. And while Matty was at our last meeting, certainly made a good contribution. Tony's down on the Texas Gulf, and so, but I'm sure he'll be a key member. I think one exception, since we're a startup, we basically took the folks that have been involved with us over the last year and a half, and adding Tony and Matty, but we assumed their interest and their dedication to the cause, short of soliciting letters of nomination, but we had verbal commitment on all our part.
So, as I remember here, and I'm looking while I'm talking, your membership is an annual term.
Yes.
And no term limits. So every year your entire board would be presented to the commissioners for
That's the way it is
approval.
right now. Some of us think that, for purposes of continuity, it'd be, but we'll address that and as a potential change.
But right now, it's not a staggered term, it's everybody's coming on, so. Yeah, and you could eventually get to that staggered thing as attrition occurs, or. Further discussion on the bylaws?
Only question I have, Charles, is you did a good job of trying to include everybody. You mentioned members from all parts of the county. 9 members within Custer were contiguous counties. I always feel bad when Wetmore is left out of things.
It's part of the county.
I know that. So who's, you mentioned the 2 towns you had there, so who's from Wetmore on the board, just out of curiosity?
You don't have anybody now,
Right.
do you?
Or did you talk to anybody then?
No, and the pace that we've been going on this since we decided to formalize it, certainly there's no problem with it, and it's just that we haven't had an indication of interest from that community.
Yeah, sometimes the communication doesn't
Yeah.
help. So
But,
wouldn't
you know,
hurt to talk.
the whole idea is, when we first started this a year and a half ago, we initially didn't have the two towns involved, and we've matured that, so I see no problem with that.
Okay, good. Yes, sir.
Just a comment, I think Bill's comment is really well taken, but we need to remember that the two towns are incorporated.
That's,
We also have San Isabel
Right.
that was not represented, and
Sure.
we have Whitmore. And I think it's a county-wide attainable housing, and I think maybe just if we made sure that they knew
We could call
about
it the
meetings
Eastern
and
Slope
stuff,
for
and they would,
Custer County.
excuse me, and they'd be, if we notified them and, just said we're having meetings and you're welcome to come and voice your opinions, and then, if, like you say, it's only a year appointment. If someone says, I'd really like to be on, then your committee can decide whether that's something you wanna do or not.
Sure.
So
I'm good with that.
I
I
think
didn't.
the point's really well taken, but we also have more than just
They
Whitmore.
are-
We have
they are
San Isabel
communities.
also.
Yeah.
and San Isabel is really just a seasonal community almost, to the extent. So, but if there's anybody identified that is particularly interested out of either of those communities,
I'd be
obviously.
happy to talk to them, I know that.
Yeah, you're not being exclusive by any means.
No.
Yeah. Okay, further discussion pertaining to the
I'll call it question.
bylaws. I'll ask for public comments, sir, real quick. A public comment on the bylaws. Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of approving the bylaws for the Attainable Housing Committee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. You do not have a signatory page on these bylaws. We probably should, so that we can get those filed. And if you could provide that at some point, sir, we would, with the, if there are no objections from the commissioners, I can sign those representing the commissioners' approval, and we can get those babies filed away. Thank you. Okay,
Do you have an
good.
extra copy, Charles?
No, as a matter of fact.
I'm sorry, Charlie. You bet.
Yeah, so we could just have a page on the date they were.
Yeah.
That would be outstanding. Thank you. Okay, so
Mr. Chairman, if I may, can I move that we approve onto this committee the following individuals: Charles Bogle, Matty Burke, Mike Carter, Tony DeLange, Steve Laswell, Monty Lee, Mike Liebman, Terry Munson, and Autumn Deaver as a tie-breaking vote member only.
Okay. I'll second the motion. I've been moved and seconded to approve the suggested committee members for attainable housing discussion.
You did talk to all of them, right?
Oh, yeah, they're.
It's mentioned it
active.
earlier, they all.
They're active participants in our meetings.
Laswell with one S or two? I'm remiss.
It's two.
Is it two? Okay.
One point of discussion, the adjoining county situation.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Liebman does not live in Custer County, and so that was a matter of trying to accommodate that without it being an issue, and covering it in our bylaws, so. And of course, Autumn lives in
Certainly, yeah.
El Paso. or
I'll ask this because somebody brought it up to me. Any conflict of interest, do you think, a possibility of a conflict of interest with bringing somebody out of the construction industry and the real estate
There is
industry?
potential, and deferring to legal counsel, I think we need to clarify, if we can, what might be, but I know in previous discussions with Tony, we had that discussion. But again, I think in the trade-off of declaration versus not, it's important to have their input to the other, because, if you look at the rest of us, all of us have got an interest. Most of it grew out of helping the school with their situation, but I figure that's not an issue that we can't overcome.
Well, and again, we've talked about it as commissioners on this whole conflict of interest thing, and if Tony happens to have a house that becomes part of the mix, he could abstain from voting.
Yeah, it's just a matter of going into it knowledgeably.
Sure.
But, and I've had that discussion with Tony specifically, but I figured we could, devil's in the details, but we can certainly work that out.
Okay.
And I just think the expertise of having someone in the housing business and who understands the real estate market is integral to an affordable housing committee. But I think there is a caution, like Mr. Chairman said, and we just need to think that through and be reasonable.
Public comment?
On the tourism board, when the item came up as to whether, for instance, a photographer or whatever could do any work for that board, you said that not only would they not be able to, would have to abstain, but they could not do the work.
Right.
So I wonder if that's an across-the-board thing for all boards. And that might be something that would affect whether they want to be on that board or not.
Would if I was a contractor, I think.
I would prefer making an overall
Yeah, I would.
an overall decision on that. Our concern was specific on that one, the photographer selling photographs to the tourism board, and I think we spoke with Deb about be one or the other, either be a board member or be a consultant to be able to be paid, because there are no paid, nobody on any board in the county gets paid. So I think if that becomes an issue, we probably ought to look, I mean, that's a good point you bring
Yeah,
up.
it's a valid point.
It's legit.
I was thinking like Maddie Bird, if she, we could if this thing all day long,
Yeah.
but if she stands to,
Make a commission by selling an affordable house.
Right.
I don't know,
Right.
personally, I look at being an advisor, and part of the knowledge base is one thing. Getting over into a contracted pay deal is clearly another thing, and we'll work that out where we have, and if they have concerns.
You know, you're right, it is insidious, because you're going along, you wanna do somebody a favor, and you pick Maddie or anybody and say, well, I'll just do this gratis for you, you know.
The thing about it is, we've got 40-some odd licensed realtors in
I
this
know, I
county.
understand.
In fact, you all may have licenses for that matter, but it's, I just figured that was an issue we could certainly overcome.
But I think Ms. Buba's point is very well taken. I mean, if we're gonna be consistent with one group, we should be consistent across the board. So I think you're right.
yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Article 6B, there's a typo, duly, it should be with one L.
Okay, we're actually talking about the members.
Yeah.
We have a motion on the
There's
floor.
already a couple of changes
Okay.
that
Okay. Yeah, so we have a motion on the floor to approve these. Doesn't mean we can't go back and talk about your comment there, Ms. Peggy, but I'd prefer to wait until we get this done. Further public comment on the motion to
Well,
approve?
the only issue that is significant is, we need to make sure that, we handle the conflicts, so, you know, I don't quite see how we're gonna do that. I know if they come up, is there gonna be something we state in a bylaw that clarifies?
I think what I said is
the issue?
we're on short notice to try to meet this meeting to support y'all's budget process.
Understand,
or
I'm just
otherwise it
asking
would
the
have been
question.
a little later. So we'll,
I'm fine with
with your approval to use county's legal support, we'll work that out.
I don't see any reason why.
Yeah, I just think as long as we're all aware. And
It's a potential. I mean, every time I open my mouth in this room, there's a potential I have a conflict of interest. So I mean, you know, we just have to play by ear and do the right thing.
okay. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. The approved, suggested committee member list has been approved. And then.
Looking for
last
bucks.
item, budget request. Is that correct?
Yeah, please. In all truthfulness, this was a little different than what I think some of our earlier conversations with the COG was. And maybe it's a realization that we have incorporated, Autumn into the board, and she has already proved to be a valuable asset. And the reality is that, she has to come up here from Canyon City area and such. And, as we all know, the cost of dealing with the COG is there's a cost. So, in addition to that, which is normally, serviced by, the membership of the county with that, so it's been suggested that $1,000 for the calendar year 2019 would be sufficient in working with, the COG and potential, DOLA grant. So I would request that consideration be, applied to incorporate that in your 2019 budget.
Couple comments, if I may. We're outside the budgetary process. This creates some angst to me. I don't want 3 more organizations to come and say, well, I should have turned in a budget, but I didn't, do with deadlines. And I recognize attainable housing has been around for a long time. When it was affordable housing, I mean, now we have, I think we asked you to become part of the county. So I think the request is appropriate. I'm concerned about 2 things. One is timing. Second is we've already preliminarily have a balanced budget. I don't know where this is going to come from.
We got this.
Was there, and as a matter of, there was monies from the affordable housing in the 2018 budget that I don't believe we obligated all that. I don't know whether that's such that it could be carried over or not.
My thought process is those monies were expended. Now, we can check, but I thought we spent those monies on the housing
Study.
I think we need to look at it and come back and we can address it.
And I agree with you. I don't want to shoot from the hip on this without, we're not talking about a huge amount. We're talking about, we have a $7 million budget basically, and you're asking for $1,000. The problem is the process has already been completed. So if I being the county, if the county chose to give you $1,000, we have to turn around to a different organization and say, I'm sorry, we're cutting you that we've already approved.
We did beat
This
up
is
people over
problematic.
$500.
Yeah, I understand.
Ms. Katie?
You do have that line item in Commissioner's budget for community outreach, grant match stuff.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point, thanks. I didn't think of that one. So it could be found without having to take it from someone else other than themselves.
Yeah.
And as a point of clarification, Commissioner Prince, you indicated that affordable housing has been around a long time. In fact, the Attainable Housing Committee has just been.
I was going to say 5 minutes.
Yeah, but what I was trying to say is that this is not Save the Elm Trees in one of the parks, a new organization that just walked in that we have no.
Oh, yeah, I get
what I meant was we have a history with this group trying to help with attainable or affordable housing. That's really where I was going. And
I
you're
misread
absolutely
your
correct.
comment.
I may not articulate very well, but no,
Yeah,
I agree
thought
with
you were getting that. You've been around a long time. Why you just now ask for money?
Yeah, that old committee was just irresponsible in their action.
No, they're 10 minutes old. I
Yeah.
get it. But it's not like they're a stranger to us. It's really where I was going.
I got you. I misread.
And I said it wrong.
I think, part of the complication as far as being able to respond to the schedule is when we, 2 or 3 months ago, when we started this deal, the thing was, we recognized we were not an duly authorized committee, and it was a matter of playing catch up.
Yeah, that conversation was actually had in one of your meetings. It was, well, we need to submit a budget, and I believe you asked us both what we thought, and we said, yeah, it's going to be hard to submit a budget if you're not a recognized organization. So
right, and so you got 2 months left on it, so you're good travel-wise till then, apparently, because you can't
she hasn't said
19
not.
budget.
And in fact, it's interesting, just as a matter of discussion and the worth of formalizing the committee. 2 of us that are on the committee happen to also be on the Round Mountain Board, and we had a proposal to us that, as it related to a significant potential housing effort, And we were able to say, basically, we can help you, because they had not looked at some of the potential funding assets that the COG and such provide us. And we're trying to set up a meeting next week with the COG to help educate these. And the good news is we've got 2, if not 3, recent indications of interest from local resources that are interested in helping our housing situation. So it's it gives us an organization that can help them and work with them. And you know, the reality, if we've got local resources that want to be involved, opposed to having to cultivate something from out of state, makes it's a win-win situation. So
Okay, good.
and the only thing I would ask is, you know, a final decision on this so we can make the excuses or alternate plans with the COG. So.
I would move that we allocate $1,000 for the attainable housing, based on a couple things. One, because they did kind of come into existence in the middle of that whole budgetary process, and secondly, I think we've earmarked some dollars for community outreach.
So your motion would be out of that fund period? Is that right? You gotta dive in.
That's correct.
I'm gonna second it to continue discussion if I may.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to authorize a budgetary line of $1,000 for the attainable housing to be taken out of the community outreach. And I apologize, I could look it up, but I don't have that line on.
She does.
That's what, that was the discussion I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
How much is in that,
20,000.
and how much have we used in the past, do you know?
This is new.
It's new.
Oh, it's new?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm fine, I think.
And I think we were gonna
120th
do
of-
10,000 for the underfunded.
That was right.
Yeah, I'm fine. Those were the
Further
questions I
discussion? Public comment? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed nay. Motion carries. We will indicate to Miss Donna that we've authorized those funds. You bet, sir. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your documentation. Sorry.
Yeah.
The second million, the federal $1 million on the towers, just 2 lines. How is that moving? Check my buddy's hand here first.
It's not that, it's more than 2 lines. As at least Bill is concerned, we realize we've had several stumbles in the process with the skid. We got through that. Thank goodness for Danielle. She was very helpful. We had a period of time that our USDA contact, our first USDA contact was on leave or something. Nobody knows where he is or for how long. Then we found out there was another designee who has multi-state responsibility for things like this. We finally had one introduction conference call with him. We provided him the financial assessment for employment and asked him, you know, is that okay? We haven't had a feedback on that. And so we're working with that. The process through EDA is a multi-level thing. We have gone through at least 2 submittals to them. We've submitted the economic assessment to the new guy. We still have 2 administrative issues. They force-fed us in how we would structure the contract, putting in another step of bid design, bid construction deal opposed to a single step. Basically, they told us, you know, if you stick with that, we won't play.
Can I interrupt this for a second? I didn't really mean to get into minutia. I'm just trying to get, it's in the process, you're meeting the government requirements, and you feel that it's still viable?
Yes.
And any guesstimate on time frame?
the encouragement and the discussion we had in the transition with the new representative, that it could be late this calendar year or early 2019. The fact of getting the economic study done, we missed the end of the 2018 year, so we know, still optimistic that we can have this early next year, and we aren't looking for any alternatives until this is proven otherwise.
That's what I need to know. Thank you.
There is one aspect, and in response to the email we all got from Christie, is that the original letter of notification sent out said we had a year and to get the matching fund. The question with Christie is if it looks like it's going to extend past the March date that we got on the letter, when do we need to implement things? And the comment was sooner the better. But then that's again, we're trying to reestablish communications with EDA. We had an optimistic situation. I was at the State Economic Development Conference last week, and the old guy, Trent, was a registered attendee, and I thought, oh gosh, I'll have a chance to talk to him. He didn't show up. So we're working on it.
Did you respond to Christie's request for an update?
We'll get something out this week.
Okay, yeah, good.
Great.
All right, so thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Charles.
Congratulations on your new entity.
Just once, okay.
This is right. But you're shaking hand too.
All right, gentlemen, the next agenda item is dealing with resolution 18-18, which was misnumbered. I would move to amend that resolution by striking 18 and inserting the number 19.
Needs to be done.
Been moved and seconded to amend the resolution. Discussion.
I'm not sure we even need a resolution. I mean, we need anything to change a typo, do we?
Well, it wasn't a typo in my book.
No.
It was a mislabel. We just misnumbered it, so
You ain't got
I just think a motion to amend would be sufficient.
on the
But
record like this.
Okay, I'm
If we
fine.
had Dolly instead of Dooley, we
Right.
could change that.
Right.
Let's get the number right.
Okay.
yeah, and I was gonna defer to you for
That's fine.
your opinion on it.
No issue whatsoever, just curious.
Yeah, further discussion? Comments from the public concerning the amendment, which I can tell you, we already had a resolution 18-18, it was an oversight, and so we approved the resolution yesterday of 18-18. The amendment on the table is to correct that and change it to 18-19.
I just have one question for Clint. So we recorded 1818 signed on the 31st. Do we need to sign a new 1819 today, or can we just fix the 1818 to 1819 and keep the signatures?
Let's officially withdraw the one that was done yesterday as 1818 and
And
replace it
just
with
replace it
1819.
and sign it?
Yeah.
I wondered if I should withdraw my motion and restate.
I think it'd be better to
So, I would move to withdraw my motion. Without objection, we can consider the motion withdrawn. Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion then to reestablish. Then I would so move then that we adopt resolution 18-19 as of today.
The motion should be that resolution 1818 approved by this board yesterday on November, or what day was it? 31st.
Be withdrawn.
Be revoked and set aside and replaced with 1819.
Good point. Thank you. Gentlemen?
I'll second that if that's what you said.
I didn't. I didn't even come close to saying that.
It was so eloquent.
Yeah.
You did a good job.
I was going a different direction, but council, I believe, is right on the money, so. I don't necessarily have to make the motion. I will.
Seconded. Move on.
It's been moved and seconded that we, I can't decide whether to use the word, withdraw, rescind,
Rescind and set aside is what I would say.
rescind and set aside resolution 18-18 and replace it with resolution 18-19 effective today.
And that should be signed again.
Yes.
As of today's date.
With new signature.
A friendly addition to your motion with 18-19 containing the same terms and conditions as 18-18.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Was there a second?
Yes, we have a second.
A lot of work to fix a typo.
Jay, public comment, yes ma'am.
Will that affect San Isabel in any way? They had a time, limit of the 31st.
I don't think so.
Well, just heads up in case they.
Because they did it, I mean, they did it based on, we didn't change any language.
That's
Your
what I
point's well
suggested,
taken.
That there be no language change,
Right.
so it's still.
So it's just
But
say
we were
that should be
informed
the
that
same.
the resolution numbers changed.
And date.
Can we backdate it to the 31st?
You can make this retroactive to October 31. 18-19 is effective October 31.
Included in my motion, without objection.
You've done a great job.
This is gonna be a big, long, convoluted motion by the time we get around to it. Further public comment? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of withdrawing and setting aside resolution 18-18 and replacing it with 18-19 effective October 31, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay, motion carries. Thank you, good point. So we will be signing that. I'll guarantee you it's probably headed up here right now. Thank you,
Quit
ma'am.
changing the date.
Changing the dates and changing the resolution number, yes, ma'am.
No, because should it be dated October 31st on the second
Wait
page?
for 31st,
You're
yeah.
welcome
Yes.
if the chair can join us.
Oh, I'm fine.
Yeah, so Brenda will be bringing that up. We'll sign it today and we'll move forward. So with that, we would welcome High Country Recycling.
Hi,
How are you?
High Country.
Hi, I'm Joni Goodman.
Hi, Jody, how are you? Good to see you. Thank you, ma'am.
I actually emailed this to you, but I don't know if you got it.
Yes.
You did? Okay. Am I wasting paper?
No, it's fine.
We got it for you. It should be
This
in
is
your
the
file.
synopsis.
Yeah, we are, actually here to, I just want to introduce Steve Taffy, who is a co-chair on this project, that we just became aware of like 2.5 weeks ago. This was an announcement of a grant that went proposal that the Department of Health came out with, gave us a 30-day turnaround to get the proposal in. It's real quick, and it's a mini grant. It's for 5 months, no matching funds, and it's related to recycling. And we are lucky in that we have a really proactive representative from the COG, Beth Lenz. I don't know if you know her, but she has been coming in and running meetings and facilitating conference calls with us and giving us all kinds of direction and guidance. And what we're applying for, there was a group of about 30 of us that met, and we looked at what could we do that we thought would help promote recycling and also extend the life of the landfill, which is everyone's concern. We thought the business community really reflects leadership in a way that we
different than just getting elected officials and others, if the business community would embrace recycling to a certain degree, because there's a lot of obstacles for all different kinds of shapes and forms for every business. It would really set a tone for the community. And so we decided to approach the possibility, and we had some business people at our meeting, of reducing the use of plastic bags. And we've had meetings with the manager, Rob, over at Lowe's Supermarket, who's very favorable in what we're doing. We know that Paul Wenke does a lot of recycling out at Ace, who's another major business, and Robin Wallerick was at the meeting and was talking about restaurants, and she owns Sangritas, of what the restaurants could do. And so their input has been very helpful. And we are going to apply for a major amount of money, not a major amount, the grant's from $5,000 to $25,000, so it's not a big grant, to purchase a large quantity of reusable shopping bags with a decision yet of what to be printed on the bags. We have, we'll give that up to the businesses that are involved to determine what the logo or the statement would say, and provide them with the bags to give to their customers in lieu of the plastic bags that they use now. And the other key aspect of that is that a lot of our team members now are interviewing, as we speak, different business owners in the community on what is restricting them, and what are the barriers to them recycling, and how can we go about facilitating the removal of those barriers, reduce their waste bill, reduce the waste that's going into the landfill. And I think, I'm not sure if all three of you were involved, or some of you were involved last year, or was it early 2017, when the Council of Governments did regional waste optimization study. And they came up with
Tell them how well we came out on that study.
Oh, it's embarrassing. Well, we came out, how well, I don't have the study with me. I do know.
Yesterday I made the comment, and you weren't here, that when it comes to regional recycling, Custer County was well above the state average. I mean, we have done a good job. We can always do better.
Right.
I'm sorry,
So
I didn't interrupt you.
So the average on the state level is low. And I wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking of the embarrassment that how much paper goes into the landfill. And that also came out in the study, and I thought, and that was household, it wasn't business. And so one of the things we want to find out from that study, because it was focused on household waste study, is what the business waste study is. And so that's something we're going to grow on. Next year, 2019, the Department of Health will come out with a much larger possibility for us to go after funding. And we want to make this a stepping stone to go after a much bigger grant. And in that conversation, we actually talked about purchasing some heavy equipment out of the landfill, a skid steer, and some other pieces of heavy equipment that they would be very amicable to funding. I mean, we had a state person with us at that meeting. So I could go on and on about the specifics of it, but the two requests we have here is, one, we would love to have a letter of support from the county, but what we really would love is for the county to agree to be the applicant for this grant. And there's no matching funds. You have a great track record with this department, the Recycling Resources Economic Opportunity, because that's what built the facility out there. That's what brings in the money from the cardboard. That was another grant that we got to put the baler and build that building, and that was the economic opportunity.
So, Ms. Lehman, if the county agreed to support this, give a letter of support, no matching funds, would we be the fiscal agent for the revenues that come in from the grant? will our accounting department handle the money and then disperse it?
Yep.
Okay.
If you're the applicant. And what we did last time is that I was here constantly assisting, I want to say Donna, but it wasn't Donna.
Doesn't matter.
Who does the fiscal?
Donna Hobbs.
Donna, yeah. Donna, I was
Donna
kind of
does it.
living in her office with her. Because that was a big grant, and it went on for a year, and actually we were all under an audit, and I actually had met with the auditors. And so I have a great working relationship with Donna, but it will be Donna's responsibility.
Got it.
Now, there won't be any employees, so there will be no payroll. It'll strictly be anywhere between $5,000 and $25,000 of what we want to purchase. And we have to purchase it in advance, so we would use High Country Recycling dollars to purchase it. And then the reimbursement would have to come to the county, and then you would reimburse us.
So just a quick question on that. Does that obligate us in other things and other hooks, like you go off and buy a baler for cardboard? Are we on the hook to maintain it? I know we got one. I'm just asking if there's some other miracle thing you come up with that compresses steel and we're recycling it as a county asset then, or who owns it?
You would own it.
You're just asking for this particular
For-
one grant.
For this just one grant.
Yeah. So
I understand. I get
But
it.
if you go
I get
after
it.
the grant.
I'm just wondering, because we're gonna tie into it, we're gonna put our name on it, so I
Right.
can see others coming. I mean, that's logical.
Well,
And it's a good thing. I'm not
and you've
bad
done
at
it before. I mean, that building
Sure.
is yours.
I know.
Out at the landfill, that is your building. It was built.
Yeah, and we
That's-
maintain it,
Mhm.
and we have to continue to do that. I'm just asking if that's the case, because who knows what we'll do. I mean, it could be
Right.
some big deal. We just gotta make sure we know what we're buying into, that's all.
Well, right now you're just buying some reusable plastic bags.
We're not buying it, the grant is, I understand.
Yeah, yeah. But you will be, if you do it, whoever is the applicant will be acknowledged
Mhm.
for making this donation to the business community.
Yeah, make
Go ahead,
comments,
sir. Yes.
Thank you. I think it's a very worthwhile cause. I compliment you on it. Even, I complimented a young man earlier when he brought in a piece of paper that was on two sides. What I'm trying to say is every little bit adds up. If there's enough little bits, it's a big bit, okay? I compliment you for doing this. To my fellow commissioners, we have done this many times in the past, especially there's no outlay of dollars for us, though. Just being the letter of support and the fiscal agent, actually it'll be our grant, which will be in their favor. I see no downside to this other than slightly more accounting, but once it's set up, it's an easy pass in and out. And I would support this.
You can apply for 10% overhead costs of whatever the grant is, so that could cover.
But you're gonna do the granting, all we're gonna do is write a letter, we the county commissioners support this, and that we feel it's appropriate for our county, and we accept being the applicant.
Yeah, we will apply for the grant if that's what we choose
Right,
to
but
do.
you're gonna do
They'll
the
do the
work on it.
legwork.
We do all the work, are you kidding?
Right, so a couple of things I have. Number one, I'd ask you not to overthink what I'm saying, but you mentioned Robin Warwick. Is that business open? Sangritas is open and running business today? Oh, okay.
Two to 3 nights a week.
Didn't realize that.
Thursday through Sunday.
Yeah, it's not Robin, it's.
Yeah, I was just gonna-
Leasing.
It's her building.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, my thinking was if we're gonna have people involved, let's get people involved that have businesses open in this county.
They are.
If they're open, then disregard that.
They
Secondly,
actually-
why is not Sustainable Ways doing this?
Well, Sustainable Ways is the umbrella for High Country Recycling. We are Sustainable Ways. So we talked about applying for the grant through them, and we will, if we have to, but there's a lot more clout to use the word, if it comes from the county, and you already have a history with this fiscal agent.
Sustainable Ways does not have that same history.
We have never gotten a grant
Okay.
through them.
Thank you, appreciate that. Okay. Group's
They know
pleasure.
us. They
Well,
know-
I move that we support this, write a letter and apply for the grant.
Well, if we write the grant, do we still need to,
You would, you would.
do we still need to write
She
the
asked for a
letter?
letter and,
Or, it was or,
was it over?
yes.
Yeah, or you could put in a cover letter, but I
Sure.
think it
Right.
will.
All right, I thought you wanted both.
No, I think you being an applicant would
Right.
indicate that you really support it.
Okay, then.
So that's the only reason I interrupted.
I'm sorry, I kinda.
I agree.
Yeah.
So the motion really is, we'll apply for the
To
grant.
apply for
That
the
would
grant.
make
Is there a second?
Okay, I second.
You said all that stuff, and you're not a second.
Been moved and seconded to apply for a, I'd like to get the name
Recycling
right.
resources, economic opportunities.
Top win, it says.
Yeah, RREO grant, through CDPHE.
Mhm.
Further discussion, gentlemen? There was a deadline on this,
11.
the end of December.
The
Ninth,
ninth,
November
we've gotta
9th,
get that
yeah.
grant in next week.
And so I'm assuming if this motion passes, then you would provide us with the paperwork for
We'll
signatures.
just sign it.
Yeah.
And is that an understood implication of the motion that, okay. Further discussion, public comment?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I wasn't able to go to this, I had a conflict for this recent meeting they had, but in talking with Beth at COG, one of the things that we don't normally consider in this realm is, considering landfill and the transportation alternatives generally kill a lot of ideas. But the idea of cultivating local businesses that would benefit and use some of the sources. So economic development certainly supports those initiatives.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And as far as the letter, we would, economic development would be certainly willing to provide a letter of support to the grant.
And I would gather that recycling group would garner those letters.
Yes, we will.
All right, good. Further comment? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very
Yes, so if you will provide us with the grant, and it's a little after the fact, but I wanted to ask you when you were gonna come up with a dollar amount.
We're still pricing the reuse of reusable bags, and then we're looking at if we're gonna have to have storage space for them. So it'll be kind of at the 9th hour, but you'll have it.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate you coming.
I got to, wait
Yeah,
a minute.
that's all right.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
you very much.
Yes, your first name again?
Steve.
Steve.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, Jay.
You can leave that door open for a minute.
Well, Miss Cheryl has been so.
Yeah.
She's been very patient.
Do you guys need another break first?
So,
We got a couple guys coming yet.
No, I think we're good. I think we're good. You don't mind?
Brenda's calling up the rest of
Okay,
her.
that's fine. Cheryl, welcome. Thank
I
you
love
for
your tradition of
coming.
shaking hands.
Oh.
Just calling you.
Oh, welcome everybody, and welcome you all.
Thanks for
Now we can start.
being patient.
JD. Cheryl, back there, you've got the sheriff, you've got JD, our assessor.
Hi, how are you?
I knew you were gonna do that.
Maybe one or two
About
others.
that.
Of course, you know, Kelly's
Tried
the
to
clerk.
be
I
chairman.
agree with that one.
Well, believe me, I've demonstrated this morning the
Well,
need.
how are you, man?
to be
Can we wait a
told.
moment or two?
Yeah, we'll give them a couple minutes. Where do you live?
I'm in Fort Collins.
Oh, you do? Okay.
See, a long trip down, 4 hours almost.
It's actually, if you don't speed, it's about 3.5.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful drive. Yes, I unfortunately, I had some business to attend to last night, so
You know how it goes when you work for
Very
cities and
nice of you
counties
to
and.
do this, thank you.
Oh,
She
no
planned to
problem.
come down and
It's
spend the
great to
night,
meet you guys.
one of the bed and breakfasts, but,
So you live in Fort Collins proper, or?
Fort Collins proper,
Yeah.
yes, my husband worked for the city of Fort Collins for many years
Oh.
and bought a home there when he could still afford a home there.
Yeah.
About 30 years or so ago.
Wow.
It's in an older section, and our daughter went to school in Fort Collins schools,
Yeah, cool.
and so, yeah.
Good, yeah, I lived and worked in Fort Collins myself, so my wife and I both. But
I enjoyed it as a community. It's a little big for me. I came originally through Colorado from Grand Junction. I really liked Grand Junction. You could drive 5 minutes, and you and your dog could be in the middle of BLM line and never see anybody else for the next 2 hours. And Fort Collins still feels a bit crowded to me. But
You moved to Custer County.
there we go. Right?
yeah, pass them out.
we,
Oh.
we all have our
Always good.
addictions here,
It was
and
always good.
we're not,
I
You're
have my
nice
summer
cinnamon gummy
Halloween
bears,
candy.
actually, you're pretty good.
I don't believe my fellow commissioner on the right will participate.
Like one now?
No, thank you.
Um,
Just get stuck in my table and I'll give
Yeah, that's right. Well, let's go ahead and get started at least. We have a couple of elected officials here. I don't know if you had an opportunity to meet them individually or not.
There's another one.
There's another one, so certainly if you don't mind, we'll make introductions.
Yeah, of course. This way or that way? What's your preference?
The other way.
The other way, this way.
They
Hi,
say
I'm
boy.
Cheryl.
This is Cheryl Trent.
Virginia Trujillo. Virginia, nice to meet you.
I'm
Hi.
Chad Bradley.
Hi, nice to meet you.
I am J.D. Ganesh.
Nice to meet you. The assessor, right?
Yes.
Yes, assessor and the treasurer.
And the
And then
clerk.
clerk.
And then
Hi.
Copper and the clerk.
And
Overlooked you, I'm sorry.
well, I'm gonna just stand here for a second, if that's all right with you gentlemen.
Whatever
Get
you're
out of the
most
way
comfortable
so
with.
everybody can see. If it's all right with you, what I'd like to do is sort of a brief introduction, sort of a big picture overview, kind of take a little bit of a dive into the details, and then answer the questions that I'm sure are going to come up. Feel free to interrupt me at any time though. I'm perfectly familiar with that. As y'all mentioned, my name is Cheryl Trent. I do live in Fort Collins. My entire career has been with local city and county government. I came the traditional way. In other words, I got my master's degree a long time ago. And I'm originally from Seattle. So I started working in the Seattle area and then moved to California and actually did not like the weather in California. So I moved up in Northern California and worked for a county there for some years before I moved to Colorado about 18 years ago. And started, as I mentioned, in Grand Junction and then came over to the Front Range to be with my husband. And opened my own firm in 2011. And my firm specializes in 4 areas. Strategic planning, economic development, and community development. And then I would consider my facilitation skills to be my 4th area of expertise. I wish I had done facilitation when I first started in public government. It's a skill set that I could really have made good use of, I think, over the years. So I'm one of fewer than 40 certified master facilitators in the world. That sounds very braggadocious, and it makes me slightly uncomfortable to say it, but it's true, so I'm going to say it. And when I served cities and counties, my focus narrowed over the last 20 years to strategic and economic development, along with some community development, which of course is so interrelated. And you guys all know what that means, so I don't have to go into any great detail. But I will say it was extremely frustrating for me when consultants came in and said, well, here's your strategic plan. Have a nice day, and it's beautiful. It's really well done. Occasionally they forgot to change the name of the other town they did the plan for. But no, it never had any real traction. There was never any real buy-in. They never really got sort of into the weeds with us and talked about what could really truly be done in terms of our scope of responsibilities and the workload that we had and the budgets. So when I made this commitment to do this work, I wanted to do exactly the opposite. I sort of wanted to start from the ground up and then work with each community to bring you a plan that really works for you. So I work exclusively with cities, counties, the state. I'm one of DOLA's preferred contractors at the state for this type of work. And sort of offshoots, so main streets and chambers of commerce and people that are closely linked with local government. I have a few nonprofit clients, but they're all very closely related to the work that we do at the ground level. So that's a little bit about me, and a very big picture overview of what I've been told we want to accomplish here is specific to an economic development strategic plan.
So it has all the normal elements of a strategic plan. We're going to want to talk about what your vision for economic development is in Custer County. We'll want to talk about what the mission could be. We'll want to talk about some big picture goals, both shorter term, maybe a year to 3 years, midterm, and then certainly longer term. And we'll want to dive right into how are we going to get this done by doing what I call some action steps or some implementation strategies along with that. And at the end, what you should have is a document, a series of documents actually. One is sort of really short, kind of a handout that's a great marketing tool for somebody who hasn't seen your plan before. The second is the longer, more detailed strategic plan itself. And then the third will be a sort of a short video that's sort of a highlight. I have found that there are a lot of people today who learn in 2.5-minute videos. So you have to cater to a wide range like that. The process that I suggested is based on the grant from DOLA. And you guys did get a grant from DOLA that funds the majority of this. And then a part is funded through the Custer County budget. But it was based on DOLA's desire to have sort of a community-driven participatory practice. And the idea is that we want to take into account all the work you've done to date, all the plans, all the work that the county has done, all the work that the cities might have done, the state work, the information we have on file from the demographer's office, everything we can kind of consolidate. We don't want to redo it. This isn't sort of a community assessment. It's not demographics. It's not that. It's more visionary and goal and action oriented about what are we now going to do with this data and where are we going to head with it. So
I'll interrupt there.
Please.
You made a good point. It's so that we can direct our budgets in the future to execute what we want to be. That's something we lose sight of a lot.
That's the critical factor for me in implementation. Really 2 areas for most groups. Budget is the most obvious and easy one to understand, and to try to align the plan with the budget and or align the budget with the plan. They usually both happen. And then any type of comprehensive plans that you have in place that would deal with the obvious things about where you want your development to occur. Because you don't want to create an economic development strategic plan that focuses on something that's just not going to be
executed.
Yeah, executed and it doesn't align with your culture and the way you want to do business, right? So what we're going to start with is, nobody throw anything at me. The idea was to start with a community-based survey. Now, there's a lot of ways to do a survey. And I found that the more ways you can get the survey out in the public, the more effective it's going to be. So we should absolutely have it online, no question. But we should also print out hard copies. We should put it out in the schools. We should work with the churches, with any HOAs that might exist, with the cities. Any groups or organizations, I just saw one come in today that can distribute it to their contacts, Rotary, Lions, Boy Scouts, door to door, however we can do it. And I think that survey should stay open for as long as we feel that we're getting fairly consistent feedback on it. When the feedback starts to trickle down, then you probably know that it's time to wind it down. But certainly 30, 60, even 70 to 75 days, a couple of months would be good. And then we're going to kick off with a big community meeting, where we're also going to talk about the survey. So the survey won't be closed then, and that's another way to get out. But we really want to talk to the community about what their vision is for economic development, what they think and how they feel, what kind of thoughts they want to share with the commissioners about that. And that'll be slightly based on the survey data, because we'll share it with them and we'll ask what they think about the survey data as well. And once we kind of get that overall arching vision done, we want to bring it back to some type of, for lack of a better term, let's call it a steering committee right now. I've heard it called all sorts of things. But a smaller group of people that can then guide this and help really narrow it down to get a vision statement and a mission statement, and can really start to work on some of those details around goals and objectives. You can't really do that with hundreds of people, but you can do it pretty effectively with, say, 7 to 15 people. And part of that, I know, extends back out to the various elected officials and appointed officials here at Custer County by saying, okay, we don't want to go off the reservation too far. If you're going to tell me, yeah, Cheryl, that's against the law, or your attorney is going to say that, I'd love to know that up front before we get all down the road to the steering committee and get all excited about something we then can't do for you guys. So the steering committee is going to help me narrow that down. We're going to come back to the public in a series of meetings, and then the eventual result will be brought back to the Board of County Commissioners for your adoption and approval. That entire process, we wanted to skip the holiday season. The survey can start at any time, but the actual community meetings are designed to start later in January and continue for a period of about 2 months, so that your project should be in front of you for approval in sometime in late April, early May. Now, a lot of things can happen in there, right? You can decide you need more feedback, you need to expand or leave the survey out there for longer. We might have designed a community meeting that falls on a bad night and we don't get very many people, and we might want to redo a community meeting. So the process is designed to be a little bit flexible that way too. That's the big picture, and then some of the details. So I think it's probably good for me to stop there and see if anybody has any questions about the process before I really go into some detail.
Well, I have one, and that deals with the survey. Maybe it's the minutia part. We're a little early on that. Who's going to write the survey, but more importantly, who's going to have input on what is in the survey? And really, what is the survey targeted to?
Great. I like that, because that's where I was going to head next to, so it's perfect. So before I hand out some of the drafts of the survey that's been designed so far, let me tell you my experience and what I intended to do, and then you guys can let me know how that works with you. So I've done economic development surveys before, and they have to be created based on, again, reality. What's actual real here in Custer County. So if it's not real to bring in, a water park, then let's not even ask about a water park. So I like the zip lining idea, though. I still like that. I'm going to ask about zip lining. So the idea and intent is that I craft a draft survey for you using sort of what I consider best practices and questions other communities typically ask. I get that out to whomever, but I'd like the approval really to come from the county commissioners about what you want to see in that survey. I'd like your sort of stamp of, yes, Cheryl, that's okay to go out. There may be some questions that you may not think are important that I'll lobby for one reason or another, but in the end, I'd like the three of you to really give me the direction and feedback on that. So here's where we are with the survey. Thinking that we might be able to start the project a little bit earlier before we hit the holiday season, Charles and I have been working on a survey, and I had thrown in some draft questions. We talked about it a little bit, knowing that we wanted the steering committee maybe to even help us with that survey. We went ahead and put it out to see what kind of reaction we'd get from the public. It is out there on Facebook. It was promoted, and I just left it there to see what kind of response we got. We got about 50 responses on that particular survey. Absolutely nothing wrong with changing that survey completely, adding to it, taking away from it. It won't harm the initial 50 responses at all. So having said that, I think you guys have seen a copy.
Before you do that,
yes,
because picking up on Tom's comment, that's important because we want to make sure that we want to get this edited correctly to get it to reflect the diversity of and the complexion of this county.
Yes.
And so that's why that's why you've got those, so we can pass them out to the right people, and we've got to figure out who that is.
Now, I want to share one more comment before you hand that out, if I may, and that is that I have this general philosophy about surveys. One, I don't particularly care for them. But number two is I also believe that if we know what the answers are that we want, we can write the survey to get those answers, and that irritates me no end. I think we're setting the whole thing up for some predetermined endpoint if we do that. Now, obviously, the survey is directed towards economic development. I understand that, and I get that. I just want to make sure that this survey is asking, that we're wanting answers, that we're not writing the survey to get the answer we already want. I want a water park, so let's ask the questions and make damn sure we get a water park.
I think your concerns are very valid, except that's why we have a professional do it.
Exactly.
I think if the three of us and Charles sat down and write it, It would be very different than if our expert helps us.
Right.
Your job is to preclude what he's talking about.
Right.
So I'm much more comfortable than Chairman.
Oh, I'm not
He didn't say
concerned that that's not gonna happen. I just say, that's my problem with surveys across the board.
I have a problem
We
with
can
it,
get whatever we want out of a survey. I see them all the time. And then I think, well,
obviously.
And the survey can get ignored, and that's a key gripe I have, is that you get a minority viewpoint that really cares, a special interest, and they answer the darn questions, and we go off on a tangent.
Another problem is that you're trying to hit everybody. Some people look at the newspapers, some of them will have an email, some of them look at Facebook.
We got to figure out how to
It's
distribute.
hard to target everybody.
Right. Yeah. Charles had a comment, because obviously, sir, you've been involved in this. From the
Part of the deal, and you know, Cheryl gave her background. This is at the end, this is an initiative that was started about 3 years ago to try to do this, and at that time was selecting and looking at potential resources. And in fact, I ran across the email just within the last week or so. I had requested to the Office of Economic Development and International Trade and anybody else I knew of potential sources. And Cheryl was one of 3 that was recommended basically out of that. And so, to her credit, we've kind of kept a dialogue going over that 3-year period. But the point well made is that, you know, from our economic development effort, it's been, well, who decided that we need this or that? And that's the whole idea, is to gain a community deal and to come up with a plan like we have, some of us believe, very successfully done as far as our broadband plan and stuff like that. And over 3 years, I personally had not found another resource that, and if you haven't looked at her website, the resources that she's generated to support her specialty and stuff like that, it's, I think it's unique.
Yeah, well, Cheryl, I beg your pardon if that's how I came across, because that was not, I wasn't challenging your ability to do this job. I'm saying my concern is the surveys across the board. If they're not written professionally, then we can get out of them whatever we really wanted to get out of them in the first place. Doesn't matter what the community really wanted.
I think you guys hit on 2 critical points. One is the design, the questions, and the second is how are we going to get as many people as possible from throughout the county to comment on it. And I think that's really where I rely on you guys as local resources to share that, because you're right, it has to go on the webpage, it has to go on Facebook, there have to be printed copies. You guys will know the gathering spots throughout the county where we can distribute this, where the guys always sit down and have coffee every morning,
Hard
at
copy,
6:30.
get kids out with them, whatever.
Exactly. So those are the 2 critical factors for me. And it's almost impossible to design a statistically significant survey around issues like economic development. Almost impossible. So I never treat my surveys as if they're statistically significant. I look at them as if they're the public opinion, and you take it as elected officials, that's how you should take it too. This is general feedback from the public. We still need to figure out whether or not this is an effective option for us. Regardless, it is kind of a barometer.
Right.
If you have a whole bunch of people saying, for example, we should focus on outdoor recreation, and that's something you hadn't considered or weren't likely to consider before, maybe it's good to maybe do some work on that over the next 3 years or so.
Okay.
But having said that, the survey that we did design asked some general questions in multiple areas. So we tried to ask people a few things. You know, why did you come to Custer County? Because that's always an interesting question for me to ask a community in terms of economic development. People coming to your county are going to drive your economic development, whether they came to live here because of family or to open a business, or whether they came originally to sort of do something like tourist activity, outdoor activity, and then decided to stay because it was so beautiful. And then we talked to them a little bit about what do they think is working really well right now among the economic development initiatives they have. We talked a little bit about what approaches. So, by the way, I do not expect instant feedback on this survey from you, in the least.
Right.
What I would like to say is maybe about 2 weeks from now, I'll reach back out to you And I will, in the meantime, send you a direct online link for this survey if you haven't seen it yet. It's on the Facebook site. And you can give me comments and feedback that way. And if we can get it done before Thanksgiving, that'll get it off y'all's plate and we can start working on it.
So my intent before we do that was, it's not just this group.
Correct.
They have their other contacts, so they need that soft copy to distribute, and we want to get back some feedback on how to fix this survey the best we can. That make the questions, for example, that first question you just read, why are you here? Well, you know, you first read that and say, oh, that sounds like, why'd you come up to eat dinner and go back to Canyon City? You know, I'm a resident, how do you focus it? So you say, you've been here, how long, and why did you here, or were you born here, whatever. So we want to try to get it to be as informational as we can, informative, I should say.
And yet still short enough that people are willing to take it.
Right, that they're not going to
So
blow into 1,000 questions. You can't have that.
If it takes more than about 5 or 7 minutes, you'll lose them.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Trent, could you please give me the Facebook page I'm looking for, what it's called?
Yes, it's the Custer County Economic Development Facebook.
Oh, it's on
Custer
okay,
County.
got it,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I thought maybe it was something.
That's
Thank
quite
you.
all right. I think we tried to embed it on the web page, and I think there's a button on the web page for Custer.
That's fine, I'm very familiar.
And I do want to stop here and just make a point so that you know that I'm really clear on this. I am very clear this is Custer County's economic development strategic plan. So, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you.
Yes. Yeah, one of the feedbacks I had early on from this survey when it first popped up on Facebook was, I will not verbatim the comment, but it was
Good.
to the point that the person who looked at this survey was born and raised here. And they said it's clear that this survey was written to be taken by anybody that lived here less than 5 or 10 years.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And I looked at the survey and then I went, there's nowhere in here for me to tell anybody that I've lived here for the last 40 years.
That was my point.
And that was the way I took it.
Really?
The very
Interesting.
first
Okay.
two questions.
Yeah.
That's
So,
great. So add a question, obviously, about time frame.
It is a county.
yeah, and I don't propose we go through a question by question.
We're not going to go try to.
But I just wanted
edit
to
it
throw
down.
that out, that was a
That's a good point. I wouldn't
Perception.
know how to answer the first two
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because I've lived here all my life.
So-
I've lived here my whole life. How did you become aware? Well, I was born. How did you choose? Why did you choose to locate here? Well, that's not-
And then-
And no choice.
decision. Yeah, I mean,
I got
I
stuck here.
And
wouldn't
then
even know how to
my,
answer them.
the follow-up to that comment from that person was, obviously, if there's nowhere for me to indicate that, then they're not interested in what
In what
I
I have to say,
have to say
correct.
about economic development. Only the people that have moved here,
Within the last 5 years.
I'm not putting years on it, but
Whatever.
recently.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense, and that's the great thing about getting feedback like this is I can try to design something I think works perfectly, but it clearly didn't hit the cultural mark right off the bat. So
Mhm.
Yeah, the first two questions are gonna run off.
I
A
got
lot
it.
of us.
I got it.
Yeah, no, yeah, no. That's just,
So, well, we're
because
not
you're gonna
done
be like, oh,
beating,
this isn't for us.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're not done beating you up yet, see?
Well,
You'll
yeah, I
know
was
when
gonna
we
say-
are. We'll say, okay, let's move on, but until then, no.
After
knows
20
we've had a lot of
years, I can
talk. Yeah.
pretty much take anything you
Yeah.
throw at me.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see.
And then when I looked at it, I thought, well, I didn't really see about jobs specifically, or the school specifically. Those were, there may be a question in here about that, but I thought,
There's some general questions that offer things like education as a response, or let's invest in education, for example, or let's invest on creating jobs, but not specifically to jobs.
Okay.
So that would be an easy fix as well. But let me say, one of the things that's going to be difficult about collecting your feedback from, say, 40 or 50 or 60 different people is then collating all that feedback. Because you're all going to have something slightly different in terms of feedback. So with your permission, what I'd like to do first is work with Bill maybe and figure out who we want to get feedback from specifically. And it can be, I don't mind 40 or 50 people. That's not the issue at all. But if I could coordinate sending a note out or an email or a letter out to those 40 or 50 people and ask them to respond through a certain channel,
Sure.
that way I can then take it all and funnel it to make it make sense.
you're talking about input on the questions that would be in the
itself.
survey.
Yes, sir.
Modifications.
Modifications,
Yeah.
changes, thoughts
Yeah.
about what questions that you'd like to see added. What I can then do is collate all of that and get it back through Bill to say, these are the main changes that were suggested, this is what I think you should do with it, what would you like to do?
And that being said, I'm gonna look back to Charles because we gotta remember, we want feedback about economic development. We don't want a lot of feedback about other things. We can't lose focus.
And I agree, and the thing about it is with the community assessment that we completed last year, it updated things that we've had in similar community assessments before. And we don't, like Cheryl said, we don't need to repeat some of those things. There were some holes in what was done last year and such like that, but yeah, the whole intent is, to the best of my knowledge, we've never had a plan on how to develop the business base and improve the economy in this county. It's just kind of happened. And this is to formalize that and give us something that can live past all of our tenures as far as...
And I want to amplify on that a little bit, because Tom brought up a good point, and I talked to Cheryl a lot about this. It's important that the county owns this, and I don't mean us, the 3 of us, or the 10 of us, or whatever. I mean Joe Blow out there that had a little bit of input, and he's got an invested interest in a hay business that he's got, or whatever it might be. And they want to be proud. They need to know, short and sweet, what are the goals of this county? Did they leave out my niche in life here or not? You know, so it's important that we take the time to get the right input in so that we get buy-in, and these guys own that thing. And oh, by the way, it's also useful when other customers come and they say, well, what is the county all about? And then they know what our strategic plan is. They're not going to waste time coming to this board or to anybody else to go sell something that the county's not interested in. You know what I'm saying, from a development point of view. So, and I think she's real good at that, understanding. She's done a lot of that, so I have confidence that that's going to happen.
Thank you.
You know, just follow up on a statement you made that just rang the bell of clarity to me. Economic development starts to become calluses on my ears. But I really like what you just said about what do we need to do to improve the economy of our county. Now, I can get my mind wrapped around that. I don't know that it rings true to anybody else, but that whole, what do we do to improve the economy?
Yeah, more jobs. How we doing?
And I never saw an opportunity to say, I think we need more jobs. But that may be what somebody thinks. Well, okay, we would ask, how are we going to do that? What kind of jobs? You know, or whatever. But I really like that, improve the economy of our county.
I'll piggyback off that just by saying that I think a lot of times when people in general hear the phrase economic development, then they tune it out because they really don't understand it. But
they came here to get away from things. They're up here to do X, Y, and Z.
Well, not only that,
just how to perceive this.
But a lot of folks, they don't really think it's in their control anyways, and so they don't. And so economic development, that phrase alone just turns people off because they don't really understand it.
Believe me.
Not saying that I understand it.
We've lost a lot of sleep over that.
Yeah.
But boy, I do. I like that. Is how do we improve our economy?
It's the basic.
How do you improve life here in Custer?
One of the problems we have that's unique is we don't have a lot of water. That's the major thing here is, I've heard a lot of people wanted to do this big thing, but the water, commercial water, was not available, so they couldn't do it.
And those are probably great considerations of what's going to curtail improving our economy.
There are limits.
The zoning is, the way our county is zoned also puts limitations on what can be done. And some of the feedback that when this survey went out that I saw was again from locals, if you will, and I don't mean to disenfranchise people that have been here just 10 years or whatever, but that the ranching community has felt very disenfranchised. Like, you just want us to die off and go away.
So we subdivide your land.
Exactly, so that you can do something.
Like a bed and breakfast out
you
of
city
5
folks
acres.
You know, and so, you know, I mean, we don't wanna necessarily encourage a war between the city folks, but we can't just ignore that whole history and culture that we have had here for an awfully long time.
Well, there's mining interests, there's other businesses.
Well,
and
they
the
feel
whole
threatened by that.
expand the current business, that line is in here. We need to just make sure that that might include the rancher. We're not just talking about brick and mortar on Main Street when we're talking about improving the economy of our county.
I think we wrote in agriculture, but I think you're right, I don't have the word ranching specifically here. They're two very different things.
Yeah,
I mean, agriculture and ranching are two very different
Okay.
things. So, I think one of the ideas behind the steering committee was to help give very, very specific feedback and input to the survey. And so that's one of the things that would be helpful to get today from the commissioners is, I've been given sort of a wide range of people that could potentially be on the steering committee. And my recommendation is, with a caveat, the more the merrier. The caveat being if you get too big of a group, it's really hard to manage. And so what we might need to do if we get too big of a group is maybe form some subsets or maybe smaller, Bill and I were calling them maybe task force or groups like that. I'd say probably 15 would be the maximum for a steering committee that I can effectively manage in a meeting to get really good feedback. And typically my thoughts would include, I'd call them the normals, right? You'd want somebody from the city, maybe the mayor or someone the mayor wants from each city, potentially your chamber, maybe your Main Street. Fire chief, any special interest districts or special improvement districts or taxing districts, anybody like that. And then typically I would suggest that if there's a business association or a group of business people, someone to represent that interest, I would recommend somebody from the agriculture or the ranching side to make sure we cover that. And I would
call them citizens too.
Citizens as well. I would specifically invite people that feel disenfranchised or that have been extremely negative about your efforts in the past. I would specifically ask them to come and attend. Because I think that's probably more important than the people who will be your cheerleaders and your supporters.
Right.
So,
how many times would that steering committee function?
I think I have them down for 4 separate meetings. One right after the first community meeting to talk about that sort of bigger picture, what does the vision look like, and how to narrow that down into some language that we can use, talking about mission. Then there's going to be another community meeting. Then the steering group gets back together to talk about, are these goals legitimate goals, and if so, what can we do about them? And then a final meeting to say, all right, now the rubber meets the road, who is going to do what? Whose name goes on this specific activity? Otherwise, you know it's not going to get done.
And then the timing on the steering committee being formed prior to the first community meeting?
I would love to have a steering committee within the next 2 to 3 weeks so I can start reaching out to them and say, oh, hey, by the way, would you take a look at this proposed survey for me? And let's talk about what that means. And
yeah, because the first order of business is really to promote that survey and get input from a wide variety.
And also to let people know who the steering committee is, because in a community like this, my experience is that they're going to go talk to the steering committee and go, hey, what's this all about?
Sure.
So if we can get their names out there and say, you know, and that's helpful to give them at least several, especially over the holiday season, give them several weeks as well to take a look at the process, maybe refine it for us, maybe make some recommendations.
Plus they know it's not the government telling you what they know best for you.
Right.
It's them talking to us.
Well, and here's the interesting point. I always say this, be careful what you ask for. When you send a survey out, you're gonna get people telling you what they think. And I've already seen it in the results to this, even this 50 results. And it's gonna be all over the board. It's gonna be those old people need to get a move on and forget about being stuck in the past. And those new people need to quit building stuff, go back home if you wanna build stuff. Kind of, you know, I've got the dichotomy. It happens all the time. It's not unusual, it's just be careful what you ask for. And also be careful what you ask for when you turn a steering committee to some extent loose to ask them to help you with this, because they may come back with something that you're not as comfortable with.
Okay.
So
We'll discuss it.
these are public meetings and anybody is welcome to attend too. So it might be even helpful if Bill wanted to attend those steering committee meetings just sort of as a, maybe even a liaison or to help out, because somebody's likely to turn to him and say, what do you think? And sometimes it is helpful to have that so that they don't go too far astray from your budget, for example, or other significant consideration.
I would ask, so these steering committee meetings, when they occur, one of the biggest heartaches I've had throughout our entire county is that all of our meetings are right here, right in the middle of the day, when everybody's trying to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we don't have some of those meetings, and you may already have that planned out, in the evenings where citizens can attend, I think it really does a disservice to the entire process.
It's a wonderful point.
With plenty of warning, next week we're gonna be here.
Tomorrow
That's
night.
exactly right.
Tomorrow night,
And
when you come.
I found especially the goal is to hold two community meetings for each section. So the vision. We'll likely hold one somewhere here in West Cliff, Silver Cliff. And my experience with this is it works best after work, and it works best if you have some sort of food, even if it's pizza, and it works best if you tell people to bring their kids. And then maybe you have something for the kids over in the corner, a crayon contest or something. And then you probably want your second meeting to be somewhere else out in the county, and maybe even at a slightly different day. Maybe that one's on a Saturday or something like that to handle it slightly differently. And then the goal, of course, would be we have to make sure we take what happens in that meeting and share it across as many, they call them channels, in as many ways as we possibly can. But yeah, you're exactly right. Food works, though.
Oh,
If
yeah.
people think they can bring their kids, that's another big deal.
So, Mr. Trent, once we get a survey back and we assimilate the information, what happens? So now we know what the pulse of the community, although I suspect it's gonna be exactly what you say. You know, there's gonna be some on this extreme, some on this extreme, some in the middle. We're gonna go, gosh, I don't have an answer here because, you know, first of all, not everybody's gonna answer, I mean, you know, that kind of, but anyway, you get it back, you assimilate it best you can. We come up with a strategic plan. What kills me is I could show you drawful right down here, the plans that we have, that we paid for, that the best use for us right now would be to use to start a fire in our fireplace. They're worthless. And I'm really concerned about throwing money into a strategic plan, go, oh, that's really nice, look at that, we need to do this and that, and then we put it away and never look at it again. That's what bothers me.
Take him through
It'll
the
go from there.
two steps, they just asked me. What's the next, how do we get the goals, and then how do we execute?
What do we do with it?
Absolutely. And that's the whole reason I started this firm, because I was so frustrated by things like that happening to me personally in my line of work.
Good.
All that work and effort we all put into it, and then it just sits there, and a year later you're like, well, whatever happened to that thing? So, the results of the survey are going to be presented at a community meeting. And the community is going to see the full results of the survey, and then that's that facilitated conversation with them, an hour, maybe 2 hours probably, where we say, all right, these are the main themes. Let's make sure we all understand what they mean. Let's get your perspective on this. It involves everything from Post-it notes to dot voting to scribbling up on a big wall map. It's very much like what you've seen maybe in interactive kind of charrette type of a situation. Because I want the community to drive the actual vision. I want them to come up with the main themes that we're going to use in the language around our vision. So we get the steering committee, we get their sort of, we get their blessing on the actual language. We come back out to the community at the next meeting and we say, okay, this is what we think you told us that the vision should be. Is that good? You guys like that? You're willing to live with it? And that's where that facilitation skill comes in. And then we say, all right, now the survey said this is how we should be doing this. These are our main goals. Let's talk about what that really means. Does everybody on the same page when we say that our goal is going to be ziplining, and what does that look like? And let's go into some detail. Great, we come back to the steering committee, we say the community said that these were the goals and this is kind of how we should accomplish them. What does the steering committee think about that? And then the final series of events is exactly what you said. It's the action plan. Okay, if these are the goals and these are the action steps, then who is going to do that?
You need objectives to obtain them. That
Correct.
defines that.
You're right, this is a very big picture. Technically, a strategic plan has a vision, a mission. Typically it has what we would call goals, and they're SMART goals typically. Then you have some priorities, then you have some strategies, and then you have some specific action steps. And often that language is interchangeable. Some people might call them objectives, some people might call them implementation steps. They're usually typically are measurables. My experience with strategic plans is that at some point you reach a level of I don't know, it's not frustration, it's like, I'm brain dead, I can't think about this anymore. And you might need to come back to it in 6 months or a year and refine it and get more specific about maybe some KPIs or measuring objectives to be able to decide.
And actually, you do need to come back later because things change as you start executing the plan.
And specifically now, I'm going to place this burden back on you. This is a living document. When you have it, every 90 days, this board, I believe, as a best practice, needs to stick an item on your agenda for 15, 20 minutes and say, how are we doing? Sort of a checkpoint, a check-in. And those agencies, because it's not just this board or even your elected or appointed department heads that are going to be responsible for doing stuff. It's going to be like Charles' organization and the recycling, I was called the trash people, the recycling people that were here earlier, and the chamber, and the cities are going to all have a hand in this. And so I would also suggest that you hold sort of a bigger meeting, at least every 6 months or once a year, to say, how are we doing overall? What needs to change? Is this still valid? Did we accomplish this? Yay. What do we need to do next? Because that's on you guys to keep this a living document and not let it sit down there. To ride kind of herd on it, if you will, and make sure this now happens. Because like you said, you just don't want to let it sit there. But that's the goal. You have to get a name
I asked her
and a date.
about
Accountability is the
the
goal.
cost of doing that. You know, we can spend, we got our own economic line, which we can spend however we feel internally. But there are also grants, and DOLA is amenable to helping communities keep guided and stay on track. So we can do this again. Yeah.
And all that being said, we're still within the scope of our funding mechanism.
Based on a
Right
conversation
now.
that we just had, yes.
Okay.
Now, as I mentioned, it's flexible. If you decide to add 1 or 2 community meetings, we'll either have to talk about what goes away or how we want to deal with the funding for those extra meetings. But
If you have a
The one thing, when we submitted the estimate to DOLA for this, not knowing as much as we know about now, but I don't think a normal concern is, gosh, how can we afford postage or printing or this? We've got a pretty good amount of money in the grant, within the grant, that was budgeted for local support.
Good.
Meetings, food,
Good.
communications, and such like that. So I feel confident that we can accomplish.
Yeah, so we talked, there is flexibility here, like she said. We got some margin, if you want to call it that.
I think there should be, because I can come up with a process that I think will work well in this community, but sometimes when you start to roll that out, the community says, oh no, this is where you should be holding a meeting, and this is the day, and this is why, and this is who you should invite. And I think they work best that way, when somebody from the community comes back and goes, oh, have you thought about this? So we should be flexible with it.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's fine.
And the steering committee is the one who sets these things up and makes it happen, is that, or
My
who's
goal
in
with-
charge?
My goal with the steering committee is that the Board of Commissioners asks those people to be on the steering committee. And I would hope that we would have a good idea who might be sort of a natural leader or chairperson, if you will. Explaining to them that their role is really only potentially for this maybe 3, 4, 5 month period, but it might go on longer than that. But really, they're done when the strategic plan is adopted, unless the board asks them to continue. And then if there's a leader, that's the person that I communicate with. But for all intents and purposes, you can look at me like a department head for this particular project. I will be managing this project for you. I'm the person you should be holding accountable if you're not getting what you want or need. And in turn, it's my job to get what I want or need to give you that out of your steering committee. So, it's
As a
likely
facilitator, you're going to make sure that you energize the people that are on that committee.
I'll create the agenda for them. I'll make sure that I talk about what they want to talk about. I'll get them, of course, to take the survey. But then, of course, they're sort of part of my funnel. I've got the big community here, your steering committee is right about here, and the board's at the bottom of the funnel, making sure you find and sit anything that comes out.
Go ahead. Sorry.
This could all be done from Fort Collins.
I hope not.
No.
Well, I mean, we're gonna do it here, but you're gonna be the, kind of the CEO of the project, for
If
lack
you
of better.
will,
But
yes,
you
but I will
attend,
be
but
she'll be
here.
down here.
I'll be here for I will be facilitating every community meeting and every steering committee
You'll be
meeting.
down here for
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. You can't, there's no way I could do it from somewhere else.
There's no way we're gonna do it over the internet.
That's what I was concerned about.
That's okay, no
Has to be
problem.
done in person.
Valid question. I wanna take this opportunity to ask from your professional experience, just hypothetically, and we'll try to keep it really narrow and quick, but let's assume that out of this survey, this county decided, by God, we need a pharmacy.
Okay.
That's clearly one of the main things. What happens to keep that from going in that drawer to getting to a pharmacy?
3 things in my experience. The first thing, if it really is that important, somebody will volunteer to take the lead on it. I'm Cheryl, and I think that's super important. I'm gonna take the lead on it, and it's likely they're gonna be 4 or 5 team members. I can see your economic development person being one of them, your medical facility person maybe being another one, and we agree to be on a team to make that happen. And then what we do is we set very short term, sort of 90-day, 180-day, and 12-month steps that we're gonna say, okay, the first thing about researching a pharmacy is, I have no idea how to do this. How do we research a pharmacy? Well, let's call another town that just got a pharmacy, and I can give you several recommendations, right? So that's the thing, is that someone has to take responsibility. And it's often very frustrating for my elected officials when no one takes responsibility for the pharmacy. Not for me, because it doesn't go off the plan. It's still on the plan. It's just that it wasn't important enough to rise to the level where somebody felt motivated to take responsibility for it.
So can I tag on to that, because I've had a lot of experience with those objectives. She's absolutely right. You set an objective, you set a time frame. And there's things you do near term, and there's things that you see out. And that pharmacy is a great one, because it would help the economic growth of this place if you had a pharmacy up here, blah, blah, blah. So what's the time frame? So now somebody takes the lead, but somebody has to hold them accountable right here. That's when you get together and you say, how's this schedule? You said this was gonna happen, and this is, why isn't it happening? Well, I can't get JD to play with me because he has to approve some tax deal or whatever it might be in order for me to get this next step accomplished. So you manage it like a program. You're getting things to come together, and we're the program manager for it, in effect.
And then the other thing is, this community will come up with far more things than you will be able to accomplish. You'll have far more, if you will, priorities, which we then prioritize. But you'll have far more things, and they don't go away, they stay there, they just cycle through. So that bigger meeting you have every 6 months or once a year, that's where you say, are we now ready to tackle a pharmacy?
And her hardest job is gonna be goals. You can't have 20 goals. You can have 3, 4, whatever the main goals are for that instant in time. And then your goals can be massaged or changed later, but you've got to focus, and then you focus the same thing with the objectives. You can't have a jillion objectives. You can't execute. You got to fine tune it, and then that's our job too. Is we got to get real here, guys. JD's only one guy, the sheriff's another, and they got to work together, and they only have a certain amount of time on their normal job because they got to go execute this vision.
And the other thing about these plans too, it takes practice, right? It's not like you get this beautiful plan delivered that actually is implementable and people are excited and motivated about it. It takes a lot of practice. Because if you send me off to do a pharmacy and I come back and I realize there's some obstacle, it's going to take me a little longer, I need to give you that update and say it's going to take me another 6 months to do this research. But it's something that you have to practice with consistently. It's a muscle you have to flex all the time. And sooner or later, and by sooner or later, it's usually later, 3 years, maybe 5 years, it's now a part of the culture of the county itself.
Right, it doesn't take that long to go do a check. Maybe it's an hour
No.
meeting to see how you're performing.
But pretty soon, it's like, oh, what does the strategic plan say about that, right? Pretty soon it becomes you and all of your partners here in the county government that make that the culture.
One of the problems you might have, and I don't know how you get around this, is funding. Because you brought up the pharmacy. There have been numerous people wanting to put a pharmacy up there. Right. And what they run into, or so I've been told by a couple of them, is the insurance plans, and the county's on an insurance plan. They want us to buy everything mail order. It's cheaper. So they're like, your blood pressure, those pills that are chronic will not go through a local pharmacy. They will not be approved by the insurance company. And they're going, with no more people than live here, we can't make a living selling amoxicillin, selling whatever. Now, I don't know, so you can get 100% of the people to say there needs to be a pharmacy here. But without some sort of financial incentive to that pharmacy that I don't know how you're gonna do.
And that's what you do discuss, though, Jay, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna run into a roadblock on every objective.
Yeah, exactly,
There's gonna
because
be
some of
something.
these things, and I'm just using the pharmacy, they've
Sure.
been thought of before, and
Sure.
private enterprise tried to do them, and
So
found
then
there's
the
a pretty
county's
big
obligated
obstacle in the way.
to try to pass laws or relief, attract business or
Yeah.
help the farmer grow by changing the zoning or whatever it might be.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think too, when I look at economic development, improve the economy, to me, there's always those two constant roadblocks. The number of people that live in this county and money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we could change one or both of those.
That's why I kind of brought both of those
Exactly.
up.
A lot of things could happen, but.
Well, what you're gonna see is you're gonna see a lot of feedback about maintaining the quality of life. And that means, it's like an economic development, right? What the heck is quality of life? But really, what it means is the feeling that I get when I live here, I wanna protect that.
Right.
Which is typically very friendly. People know each other. Long-standing relationships. You can walk over to your neighbor and borrow something. All of those things that make living here so special, which can be damaged if enough people come here to support a pharmacy, right? Because it's definitely this
Fine
delicate balancing act that the county has to, and you talked about zoning, for example. That's exactly how to control growth, is through zoning and some of those,
Sure.
building code type details about
That's true.
architectural standards and.
Well,
that's how you
we've
protect
even
some of
had that with the Justice Center recently,
Mhm.
quality of life. We like the atmosphere, we like the looks of this building, we don't want a glass and stainless
Right.
steel building. So you roll that into your vision as you're
Yes.
growing and building different things.
Absolutely.
Another
Yeah.
problem you run into is everything's always more expensive up here. So everybody goes down below because they can't afford to buy it.
Correct.
So part of the plan would be, how do we subsidize and get a train coming up here or a truck in line that'll do things more wholesale for us? But,
But
you
the
gotta
government can't do
brainstorm.
that.
No, I don't mean that.
That's the hard
I don't
part,
mean
is
that. We
you're trying to
encourage.
meld.
That's right.
This is a government process, but all of that is affected by private enterprise.
Right.
And so it's hard to meld those two together, because we can't go out and decide that we need a pharmacy because the county can't afford to take care of itself, let alone somehow
We're not
fund
gonna
a
build it,
pharmacy.
that's right.
But
And that's the
I would
challenge.
propose, though, the 6 special districts and the 3 governments, what they do sets an environment, whether the
Without
community,
question.
the business wants to invest in our community. And that's the deal, is to have a visible and consistent relationship between those entities that says, hey, as a business person, I want to invest in this community. And cause that's what we need. We need more tax base, really. Or otherwise, those of us that still live here, our tax burden will continue to increase, because so much of what we do and get comes from a community and a set out of the county that's subject to cost of living adjustments and inflation and all that. And the bad thing is, the only thing we can control locally is how much we pay our employees. And, that's where our deal is. So if we can increase our tax base, then that will give us more resources to support the 6 special districts and the 3 governments.
Yeah, in the spirit of our timing and honoring your time, from driving all the way down here, let's move forward. What do we need to do? What do you need to do? When does that need to happen? How can we help?
And you still want to interview while you're here, to talk to some people.
I would. So it would be lovely to have today, I want to bounce an idea of the steering committee off of you, and it would be lovely to have your feedback on that, because my next step would be to reach out to that steering committee. And it's not that we can't add or subtract people as we go along. That's not it at all. It's just that I need somewhere to start. So I can reach out to those people, talk to them, get them talking about the survey. And then after that point, what I would do is ask for, I'm not sure who I should ask for, if it would be you or someone else, for a list of all of your elected officials and your appointed department heads within the county, so I can reach out to them and start corresponding with them about the survey as well, and sort of develop my contact list. And I'd like to do that over the next 2 or 3 weeks. and then get that survey out there and ask for some specific feedback by a deadline, and then hold everybody to that deadline. And I am pretty easy about deadlines, but I found if I give people deadlines, they're usually met. And then our real process starts in promoting the survey. So, for your consideration, I would suggest that we definitely have your 2 cities somehow involved, and probably the mayors of those 2 cities would be my start. Okay. And then he mentioned the 6 special districts, and I have a list of them, and I would generally just reach out to the executive director or the principal person at the manager of those special districts. So that's 9, and I like to have an odd number, because an odd number works better in decision making. But I think we have room for at least 2 or even 4 more people past that point. So if there's an active chamber, I know there's a Main Street, if there's a specific citizen type representative that you've been thinking of, I'd like to get that feedback now and see where we might be able to go with that.
Yeah, we do have the airport to consider. We've got the Judicial Center and Shannon's sort of in both, and we've got representatives there we could talk about.
And by the way, this does not preclude your elected and appointed department heads. That's definitely a group I would reach out to as well.
Absolutely.
Stock growers, cattle women. Sorry, go ahead.
Court. I'm just throwing some names.
What's CAR?
That's this area.
Main Street.
Main Street.
Oh, okay.
But at the same time, if we have chamber, card, scenic by, to me, a lot of those are going to be representing kind of the same deal. Yeah,
I like your idea of cattle women. Let's get some of our basics in and some of our
San Isabel, even for example.
San Isabel's fine, no problem.
Because we just go down that standard chamber, card.
You can have the same answer.
Same answer.
We don't even
That's
need
right.
this.
I want some citizens on there, and there's some good, some contractors.
Yeah.
Wetmore, I got Wetmore down on there too, we need a rep. Some of these will be committee, others would be necessary, like you mentioned, to interview and talk and participate.
Right, and I think my proposal includes up to 15 people to interview, and not all of those might even want to be on the steering committee.
Right,
You know,
they don't need it.
Either decline or right. So,
You got the fire chief on there.
all those districts that we talked about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And we need a contractor, you know, I mean, there's like people making a living, a lot of them making a living up here. Earthworks kind of people, carpenters, etc. There's a couple businesses that ought to be on there.
So I've got 6 districts, 2, I guess I count 3
Restaurateurs.
Wetmore. 1 cart and chamber sounds like they can be combined.
I would think so.
I know her, so that won't be too much trouble.
Somebody like Peggy Collins, who's a tourism board and a restaurant, that kills 2 birds.
Business owners.
Jay, you ought to be interviewed too, just as.
We're not going to interview
I would be delighted to.
Look at him. We're not going to interview him.
He's got a business, he's a town attorney, and he's a commissioner, so.
Oh, you're an attorney.
We don't
Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
We don't want any attorneys on
Take him all out and shoot him, that'll improve economics.
That's the advantage Clint has.
I don't know about
his arm bent,
but the
so he can't
morale
reach
would
into
go up a lot.
others' pockets.
Quality of life.
Yeah.
So why don't I do this from here? Charles has been a really great point of contact for me, and Bill knows and has encouraged me to include Charles in all of our conversations to make sure I'm still on the right page. What I'll do later on this afternoon and this evening is work through the list of my recommendation for the steering committee. I'm going to limit it to probably about 11, 13 people at the most. And then also get you a list of all the people that I think I should talk to in addition to the steering committee setup personally, and get you guys to approve that for me. And I'll just send it to Bill and make him do all the hard work working with the rest of y'all. And then from there, what I'll do is get that, would it be okay? Is it you that would be giving me a list of? That would be awesome. Get that list of everybody else so that I can send out one nice big email. Now there are going to be some people who don't do email, and it'd be helpful to know that so that I can call them personally They might have an email, but they don't like email. I run across that a lot, so I can just give them a call instead of an email. Does that sound like a plan? And you would be on that email to say, please take a look at the survey, let me know how we can change it, adapt it, what else should be on there. I'm gonna make some adaptations based on what you guys were talking about today already.
Adaptations to the survey.
Correct. You talked about, sort of defining economic development as what is it we need to do to improve the economy, develop a business base. Talking about adding some questions that aren't limiting to the amount of time you've lived here, that don't start off immediately by making people say, this isn't for me.
You got a head start with,
Would it
you're
help?
gonna get input from
Yes.
everybody.
Yep.
Does it help, or would it help with a survey? The very first question is, how long have you lived in Custer County?
Sure.
Just because now, because I would almost bet, depending on those different lengths of time, the answers are gonna be similar.
Similar or different?
So if it's less than 2 years, everybody that says less than 2 years is very similar.
Yeah.
5 to 10 years, very similar.
Comments are similar.
Yeah.
Or 20 and beyond, very similar. Does that give, for perspective wise, does that help or not?
You can do a statistical analysis that'll give you exactly what you're referring to based on question A. What is statistically, what are you getting from it? And you can get into a really close.
If you have question A, and that's what he's saying.
That was my only proposal.
I like your question A. How long have you lived here? That's much better than why did you come?
Right.
I'm not the writer. I don't know anything about it.
You can add
but
why
to me
did
it
you
sounds
come
a lot better.
afterwards if you've been here less than 10 years.
Yeah.
Why did you come?
You could quantify that, sure.
If you weren't born here, why did you come?
Yeah.
I used to ask that question all the time. How did you find us?
Yeah, that's
I had a
always,
relative.
it's fascinating, and it's almost always family related, or they came here because they heard about some sort of outdoor, we're in Colorado.
Friend or
They heard some-
Yeah, this lady come from Canada, and I says, really, you found Westport from Canada? And, well, I have family living here.
Yeah.
Elected officials, I want to give you an opportunity because I really appreciate your time of leaving your offices and spending this much time sitting in a meeting. Other things, comments, concerns, thoughts that you have for Cheryl or?
She knows better than I do this, but your problem with surveys is always who responds and who doesn't. But I mean, like the broadband survey, I took it twice. I took it once as my house and how I use it in my house, and once how I use it in the office. I tried to get other people to take a survey. I'm not taking a survey. It takes up my time. I'm not gonna. And same with meetings, coming to meetings, we
That's why it's
get the
important
same group of
to put a
people.
hard drive
They
between
come to
now and
meetings.
Christmas.
Yeah.
But she's done this enough, she's run into those obstacles before and knows that those are the big obstacles.
Well, I really
getting
think.
people to attend and
And
getting
it's
people to
you-
provide their input.
In a town like this, in a community like this, it's usually me asking you, hey, would you mind taking the survey?
Right.
And if you ask 10 people, and you ask 10 people, and you ask 10 people, then, statistically, I know that results in your surveys have been smaller numbers, and I don't know what number would be a good number. Statistically, they say if you get somewhere between 7 and 8% of your population to respond to your survey, that's a solid, good quality response.
Based on the size of the population.
Correct. Right. So obviously, if you
Well, I
have
really
10,000
like-
people, if 700 responded, you're doing really well.
400 people, you'd be
It'd be a
based on
huge
70%,
survey.
that's
Therein
400.
lies the issue.
Yeah, you gotta watch it.
But it's
Also,
gonna
if you
take
sell it.
a concerted effort to sell that idea to get 400 responses. I'd love to get 10%, man.
Yeah, it would be fine, and
It'd be huge. Cause that's a lot of people for the county.
even if they were very
right.
similar, you got more
is it in your
buy-in.
interest
Well,
to take
yeah.
this survey?
People will help you promote this.
I am one of those people that don't do surveys.
Well, would you do it?
You're gonna do it this time, Virginia.
Would you do it if I
Stand
gave you a
there and
$5
get the
Starbucks
hard
card?
copy.
Okay.
A lot of people that have lived here a long time have been through this so many times with the stickers and the dots and that their initial reaction will be, been there, done that,
What good is this?
not interested. And so what will happen is the meetings will be filled with people who don't feel that way, and the initial people won't be represented, but they don't think they're represented anyway. So
You could get that.
we've had the master plan and the this plan and the that plan and the stickers and the even
Right.
with pizza.
Why is it they don't think did they not see anything come out of those plans?
That's what's happened in the past.
Yeah, or they saw
Time
stuff
and
come
time
out
and
that
time again.
they had,
Well-
that did not reflect them in the lease.
But Jackie, here's times have
just-
changed. True, you can always say that, but process has changed, and what hasn't happened in the past, nobody held anybody accountable. It was just a piece of paper, and they just let it sit.
But people won't know that.
So now it's up to us. I know. So now, how do we combat that?
Right.
It's us making sure we get. That's why I'm hard over on getting this survey to a lot of people,
Right.
so they know what's going on, and then they understand it's going to be different because it's going to be a process that's going to be professionally handled as well as held accountable by the people that are executing.
I think the underlying issue too, to speak to what you were talking about, was if I don't have a burning desire for economic development, you can take that survey and fly with it. I don't have time, I'm not interested. We've got to figure out a way to sell it, to say, if you care about what's going to happen in Custer County, you sit at the coffee shop and bitch all the time about how all the new people are taking over.
Yeah.
If you care about what's going to happen in Custer County, here's an opportunity for you to have some input.
Right, does it bother you that you see all these houses popping up in the valley floor? If that bothers you, then you better
Take
get
the
involved.
survey.
Big
If
word.
you don't
Do
like-
you care?
Do you care?
Yeah, if you don't like
Motto.
all the for sale signs up and down Main Street, take the survey. Have some input. Obviously, it's economic development. We can't get around that. It's not your lifestyle. We're not doing a survey on your lifestyle, but we got to make them care and make them understand
Well,
that.
it's like question 12. It talks about what kind of growth would you support in Custer County. And I was going to give you feedback on it, but if you phrase that, so Custer County is growing. If you had your eyes open this summer and you had a pulse, you know that our county is changing dramatically just in the last 5 years.
Just drive down
Everybody
Main Street.
around here. So Custer County is growing. How do we, and then you
Right.
around that, because how much growth would I support? Well, probably as little as possible, because we don't have the infrastructure to handle growth right now. Our county doesn't have it,
See,
so.
and there's those hard questions
Right.
may get the hard answer. I don't want any stinking growth. Why?
Right.
Not just because, but why not?
It's not because you don't want growth, it's
That's
because you can't,
we can't
what are you
handle
gonna
it.
do about it?
Right.
We
My
had
favorite was
6.8% growth in this county documented by the state last year.
Last year,
Now,
6.8.
Now, by growth, meaning people moving here. Doesn't have anything to do with
Increased
infrastructure, doesn't have
No, I
anything
mean,
to do
that-
with the economy.
And that's why we know we don't have affordable housing for his deputies or our school teachers or
But-
for the other folks.
That could be 12 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
Yeah,
thing
my
about it is,
6.8% of what?
well,
But I'm just saying, they used to say, oh, Custer County is the fastest growing county in the entire world.
6 people.
Well, yeah, because
Yeah,
we
3
went
people
from
come.
3,000 to 3,020.
Right.
but
That's
I mean,
true.
that's the games we play.
But that 20% is also reflective of the strains it puts on infrastructure.
Sure.
And so it doesn't matter if it's a 6% growth in Denver or a 6% growth in Custer County. That 6% growth actually is exponentially more difficult for Custer County than Denver because that infrastructure is not in place.
That's true.
And some of us say, if you don't have a plan, we certainly aren't going to end up
That's
where
a
we
fact.
want.
Right.
And I also say, if people that have got a whole lot more money than all of us combined came over that hill from the east and said, boy, this is a pretty valley, I want to buy it, they could. And we
Well,
wouldn't
they
like
did. It
that.
just happened to be in Werfenau County in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other thing, if I was in Charles' business, I would be thinking, what if this survey says we want to limit all of it to here? We don't want to open the skies.
I think that's always been the basis here.
I do too. I think there was this baseline thing of, and you said it earlier, why do we love living here? Because it's just like it is. If it changes anymore, guess what? I'm probably going to put a for sale sign on my place and get the hell out of here.
Looking for a smaller town.
I'm afraid we're going to run into a certain amount of that. I would
Absolutely.
be discouraged if that was the case, if I was in your economic development
No,
arena.
I would be able to shut the door and say, if this community, if that's what they want, and
Then let's-
I'd
Sure, if
probably
that's
put
really
my
what
for
they
sale
want.
sign
There
up.
you go.
But you see, that's why you have a roadmap. If you got a goal and you don't have a roadmap to get there, any road will take you there, right? You can go in circles all the time. So you focus. And if the focus says, I want to limit it to 2% so I can get my roads graded every year and you only get 3 more people, then that.
But you can't limit it.
No,
I was gonna say,
that's
how
the
do we
point.
do
You
that?
can't-
It's
you
America.
can't stop
Such
it.
thing
So
as
it's
limit.
America.
Well,
You can't limit growth.
you could.
Because I could buy,
Water,
if you have property for
land
sale and I
use,
wanna buy it and build a house,
And our
Regulate.
zoning
can't do anything
does
about that.
No, that's right.
Money can overcome, but I will tell you this, you can control the type of growth.
Right.
that you get.
That's right.
That's
Both
right.
demographically
Right.
and the built
Absolutely.
environment, you
That's
can
right.
control that.
yeah,
And, you know, some counties want to and some counties don't, and that's what
Right.
makes each county unique and
Right.
yourself, if you will.
yeah.
You're right, you can control it, you can't limit it.
And that's why they need to answer the survey, because
You want to control the
you
where.
can't control it,
Smart.
but you got, yeah, you
gotta
gotta,
say
you
it.
better have a
Influence
say
it,
in it or you're
absolutely.
gonna.
You could direct it, yeah.
I've had people tell me the reason they're moving in here is because we're not marijuana. There's people out there looking
Oh,
for
good.
counties that don't have marijuana.
Interesting.
That's what
Selling
I'm
point.
Exactly.
Well, we've got it all around us. I mean, look at Pueblo, they embraced it,
No,
and it's
Right.
driving people out of there.
vote for it.
Yeah.
I didn't, yeah, and that's a whole nother cat to skin when it comes to surveys.
And that'll show up.
I'm not
That'll
gonna
show
open
up
up
If it's in here.
whatever storage bin they keep marijuana in, I'm not gonna open that up.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no.
Well, thank you very much. If there's something else, I'm not trying to cut you off.
No, sir, I think that's my next plan of
Okay.
attack, and again, the idea, and you'll see this time and time again, so, I've been trained, if you tell somebody something once, you have to tell them 7 times. So you'll see timeframes from me, and you'll see them again. But the big sort of kickoff, the survey should go earlier, but the big sort of first community meeting will be in late January. And that'll be a question I'll have for everybody is, you know, what time in January, what night of the week would you recommend? Would you recommend a weekend? And then we can just try a few different time frames and see what happens. And then, of course, the newspaper's gonna be critical to getting the word out on that, so we need to let you know far enough in advance, too.
Yeah. You know, if, I was just thinking while you were saying that, if everybody in this room could go out and get 20 people to fill out a survey, that's 5% of the population. We'd be halfway there.
You would be.
So there's 13 of us, pardon?
I know different people than you.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Or you get to them before I do.
Well, yeah, and
It's
that's
like
the
fundraising.
steering committee's responsibility
It's all
too.
about
That's one of their
everybody, so.
jobs.
Yeah.
Will be to let people know what's going on, pass the word, get them to take a survey.
Now-
So you need to be flogging us on getting the questions back so we can actually implement the
I just heard I have
survey.
permission
Did
to
a
crack
good
the whip.
job.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we had remote locations for this, let's say there's a stack of these surveys at the coffee shop. I don't see a problem with them filling them out. How do we get them back? Do we leave a tray there, a box there, stick them in?
That's usually whatever's easiest on the person filling out the survey. If it's okay with the business owner,
Put it on
I
there.
just have it right there.
Or give it to Keller's courthouse or something.
Right, whatever's
extra
easiest
trip
on
won't
me
work.
in filling it out.
Pardon?
An extra trip won't work.
No.
Fill it
No.
out right
Fill
there.
it out right there.
That's
Put it in
why
the box,
yours,
be
put it in
done
the box
with
with you.
it, go
Right.
punch their cows.
Right.
And you know, it
Yeah,
doesn't
they
really
do.
matter if we pick them up once a week or once every month, that their information still gets in.
Right.
The only real
Get
problem
them to
with
the
hand
school, get them
surveys
to
is
the
the data
parents,
entry.
get them home.
Is the data entry.
Is the data entry. Especially if you ask a lot of open-ended questions.
Right.
And we did in here, you can see almost every one of these has an other, tell us more, tell us something else. So that's the only real downfall is the amount of time it takes for the data entry.
And in your experience, do you get a lot of others filled out?
Yes,
Okay.
everybody has a specific opinion,
Okay.
yeah. And that's what we want, right? So, because we're not gonna be able to think of every question, and back to your original point, you want to talk about things that you're already doing or already considering to see if they think it's as important as you do, but you don't wanna lead them down the path and close
Right.
the door for something new or unique, so hence you ask, and you'll see I asked it 3 or 4 different ways in here. What else do you have to share? What else can you tell me? What else should I know? What would be important? To ask as many ways as we can.
I would suggest too, as far as the survey and subsequent and even into the implementation phases, it's important that you as county commissioners are very visible and in the fact that you're supporting this effort. And I would also encourage you to talk to your counterparts in the 2 towns, because that will be, how can I put it, different,
Yeah,
for lack of a better
absolutely.
term.
absolutely.
But, you know, if it's really important,
Mhm.
say so. We can get articles in the paper relating that, and I think that will mean a lot.
Well, and I'm just thinking, I attend a fair board meeting, there's 9 people in there, folks, want to get on the agenda, I would like you to take 4 minutes and each one of you fill out a survey. It's important to the county.
Give them extra copies.
Absolutely. And some people will be handier, so we can even create a little postcard that has the link for them too, so
Right.
you can just link it through to
Right. Now, what if I filled this out and did it online? Is that gonna
That will double
convolute
count.
the whole thing? So we gotta be careful
The
about
way
that.
the survey data is set up is that it only allows one response per ISP address.
Okay.
So if you fill out one at your computer and then go to your son's computer, that's gonna count as a separate one, and then fill out one by hand.
Right.
So you could totally sway the whole survey.
So then
So
we
we're-
have to manually check the written copies.
We're just asking, just please fill out one.
Typically, and sometimes people don't want to leave their name, and I often won't require a name, because sometimes you get better data in today's era where they think that they're anonymous, and they are in fact anonymous.
Right.
I'm not gonna know whose ISP address it is. But in the real sense of the word, you're not gonna be able to skew the data enough to, and again, it's not a statistically significant survey.
Right.
If it were, we'd give everybody
Yes,
a code, and there would only be one code, but that's not.
Right. Anything else for Ms. Trent?
Now, you have some canned commercials to go do this kind of thing that we could use as a straw man or a template to
For press
publicize it. Yeah,
releases,
for
yes,
press
absolutely,
releases.
yep,
Really well.
absolutely.
We want to get it in the paper all, you know, there's no reason why we, I don't know what the budget is, I know that the newspapers are willing to work on, from a community point of view. We
Would
get this in the
Would it
paper
be
for
smart,
every week.
would it be smart to do a quick little 45-second or 1 minute on the phone video of one of the commissioners, someone standing downtown talking about it, and then we put it on all of our different Facebook pages, I mean, with the link to the survey right on there. That's the world we live in.
It's like Tipton standing in front of grandma's house.
And I don't know what kind of, I saw, it's the IT manager, is that one of your groups?
Yes. Mhm.
I don't know what kind of, skills or, equipment, tech equipment he's got around that, but they're really easy to do.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
need to on your iPhone, yeah.
I mentioned the possibility too on the website, the county website, about including that as well as our Facebook pages and stuff like that, since it is a county function for that matter.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of social media, the more websites and the more Facebook pages it's on, the better, because it all goes back to the same survey. Just reaches.
I just think though, if you have that video and you have somebody going, and they look, you point, does this bother you that we're having this growth?
You should
Do you
be
care?
fully armed
Yeah,
in your
do
SWAT
you
gear
care?
with your gun and your taser and say, take the survey. I'm thinking I'll
Do
do it.
you care?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See how he's volunteering other people?
I know where you live.
Yeah, I know where
We're
you're
tracking these ISP numbers. And we know which one's yours.
Yeah, we'll get our IT guy.
You have
involved.
48 hours.
I was just looking here, I don't know when we got a set place to post that on our county
On the
website.
right-hand side,
On the
there's
left-hand.
where he's got the announcements, and I know we've got some stuff on the broadband there too. It's not highly visible, but it might help
Got the weather.
bring people to that for
I
that.
like the Facebook thing.
On Facebook, it'll go everywhere.
We could get,
It'll be in India and
we can get almost everybody
under the
in
age of
Well, would
30.
you all join me in a round of applause for Ms. Trent?
Oh, thank you.
Certainly, thank you very much.
You
Great
guys were
job.
very generous with your time.
You were certainly willing to listen
And you waded through all
filter
the other
out,
stuff.
yeah, waded through it. That's
this
right.
truly is very important to us. I mean, we may ask pointed questions, and we actually had a man stand up not long ago that says, why do we even have an economic development corporation in the county? We don't want no economic development. I mean,
We don't want no
there's a
growth.
mindset there, and then there's some that say, I can't wait till the Hilton Hotel comes into the bluff. I mean, we have all the
Right.
streams, but unless we get a good feel, we can't do anything. So I appreciate this effort, and I just don't want it to go in a draw with the rest of them. That's all I'm concerned about.
Were you around when Trib did that April Fool at Walmart?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes.
How long did
Oh,
that last?
oh.
A year?
Everybody-
When's it coming? I hate that.
No way, I don't want it.
Yeah, our newspaper had an April Fool's front cover.
And it was really realistic.
It was
The
good.
headline
It was
was
great.
Walmart coming to Custer
Great.
County.
Oh, it was fun.
Oh my goodness.
Lost their mind.
Yes.
Lost their mind.
I am not
Well, thank you very much, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
And
Eric.
I'll be around for a little bit
That
too,
is
so if you have anything else.
Appreciate it everywhere.
Every year.
I know. Jordan promised that he would keep it out.
Don't
I hope so.
Thank you, guys. Sheriff Byron, quick question. If
Yes.
you know the
Did you
answer,
wanna meet a little bit later?
can you discharge a firearm within the city limits of either of the 4 cities?
You want to go
Legally.
get something lunch?
You know, let me hang out here for just a second.
No.
Make
We're not
sure.
supposed to.
So hunting within the city limits is not legal because
That's
it
correct.
involves discharging firearms.
That's correct. And the incorporated
Archery, that's
falls,
not discharging.
falls under the same thing.
Oh, it does?
Yep.
Okay. All right, perfect. All right.
Sure does.
I wouldn't mind talking to you at all.
I moved
My
over
job.
to
I talk to Jordan.
Oh,
Second that.
wow. Been moving second to adjourn.
Forgot we were still in the
Well, I guess not.
everybody publicly acknowledged that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Just adjourn. No.